Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto x Charlotte Smoothie. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Naruto Uzumaki considered himself a very self-sufficient young man. Born on Katabami Island in the South Blue, he was the son of a local fisherman, Minato Uzumaki. According to his father, Naruto's mother was a pirate who left shortly after he was born. Strangely enough, that didn't bother Naruto, who was just content to have the love of a single parent. Better than what most kids in this show get. Naruto could tell his father adored him as he made sure to pass on all of his skills. From hunting, scavenging, fishing, and fighting. All these disciplines were pounded into his head by Minato. Naruto believed his reasoning was that he wanted his son to be able to stand on his own in case anything happened to him. Unfortunately, his father's paranoia proved justified around Naruto's 11th birthday. While returning from a fishing voyage, Minato's ship was attacked by a sea king. The nearby Marines who found the bodies and wreckage sent word that there were no survivors. It was only after overcoming his grief did Naruto appreciate how far his dad was able to plan ahead. When going through his father's possessions, he was able to find his safe, which was filled with a hefty berry stash. However, being the savvy kid he was, Naruto quickly realized that the money, while helpful, wouldn't be able to sustain him forever, and he needed to find his own source of income. Luckily for him, he was able to form a contract with one of the local restaurants who did business with his father, the Curry of Life shop. This local favorite was run by an elderly woman named Sancho, who agreed to pay Naruto in exchange for his services, providing local game to the restaurant and occasionally helping to prepare dishes. This proved to be Naruto's dream job as he grew up hunting, and the constant exertion of it made him stronger. Naruto, age 13. 2 years after the death of his father and employment under Sancho, Naruto was heading towards Katabami village with the body of a large boar on his shoulders. Man, this fat pig was a pain to bring down. Naruto whined as the weight of the boar strained his shoulders and back. Hopefully Granny Sancho will give me a big payday for all the pork she'll get from this guy. Maybe she'll be so happy she'll make me a special pork-flavored curry of life on the house. Naruto said, drooling at the thought of eating more of Granny Sancho's delicious curry. Walking through the village square, Naruto struck an imposing figure for his age. Standing at an impressive 5 feet 4 inches with bright blonde hair and blue eyes while carrying a boar almost twice his size, the townsfolk were quick to clear a path for him. Finally reaching his destination, Naruto went towards the Curry of Life shop back entrance and entered in a typical Uzumaki-like fashion. Granny Sancho, the great hunter Naruto, is here with a special delivery, he exclaimed, kicking the door open with surprising force and stomping into the restaurant with a wide grin. Maybe if he'd paid a little more attention to his surroundings, he would have been able to avoid the flying ladle that smashed against his forehead. I've told you this multiple times, Naruto, this is a kitchen, not a playground. Sancho lectured, producing another ladle out of nowhere and going back to stirring her pot of curry. So mean, Granny, is this how a boss should treat their best employee? When an employee is being paid as much as you are, kid, I can treat them any way I want. Explained Sancho while stirring the curry pot, looked over the boar carcass approvingly before handing the blonde a fat stack of berries as compensation. Jackpot, Naruto thought, his eyes turning into berry signs. Today was a good day. Naruto thought, leaving Granny Sancho's shop with a fatter wallet and a stomach full of her special curry. He headed to the outskirts of the village and smiled when he saw the home his dad built and had lived in all his life. It was a cozy little one-story house that sat on a cliff overlooking the sea. It was only when he reached his home that Naruto saw the foreign ships on the horizon. Only years from now, when looking back at this moment, would Naruto realize that these coming events would change the course of his entire life for better or worse. However, for the 13-year-old boy who had only known the peace of his home island, his only response was to shout at the top of his lungs for all to hear. Pirates! In the several hours after Naruto saw the pirate ship coming on the horizon, Katabami Island became a war zone. The invading pirate ship was covered in golden plates with a lion as their figurehead and Jolly Roger. The pirates seemed to have no intention of negotiating with the villagers, since the minute they disembarked, the pirates immediately started to pillage and burn as much of the village as possible. Things quickly devolved into an even struggle between the pirates and the citizens of Katabami Island, who didn't take too kindly to strangers assaulting their home. The people of Katabami may have been peaceful by nature, but this was still the South Blue we're talking about. Unlike the peaceful Sea of the East Blue that was crawling with Marines and relatively low-level pirates, the South Blue was considerably more wild, and because of their lack of constant Marine HQs, many islanders had to learn to take care of themselves when necessary. Making his way back to the village, Naruto ran towards the section of the village containing the shops and restaurants. After checking the Curry of Life shop and seeing that Granny Sancho was smart enough to evacuate with the majority of the civilians, Naruto decided to join the men and other fighting civilians against the invading pirates. "This is no place for you, kid. Go find someplace safe to hide," ordered a burly man who was currently clashing swords with one of the pirates. He was the owner of the town's bakery, if memory serves. "I can take care of myself, Pops," Naruto said, using his smaller body to slide under the legs of a random pirate and slashing his ankles with his hunting knife. When the pirate took a knee from the pain, Naruto smashed his fist into his face, knocking him out cold. "Fine, kid, but be careful and try not to get yourself killed," warned the baker before he broke the clash with his enemy and gutted the pirate with his sword. Shaking his head in confirmation, Naruto proceeded to enter the fray, taking the baker's words to heart and using surprise attacks in order to incapacitate a dozen of the weaker pirates. However, this shift in favor of the people of Katabami was cut short the minute the blonde heard the scream of an attack. "Voice missile!" yelled an older masculine voice before a blue beam blasted through a building down the street from our favorite Uzumaki. The person walking through the rubble of the destroyed building was a fairly tall, dark-skinned, red-haired man in golden armor that resembled a cat and was surrounded by the unmoving bodies of several Katabami villagers. "What is taking you guys so long to defeat these weaklings? Our job is to burn this town and take all its gold, remember?" yelled the pirate, obviously the captain of this crew. "Yes, Captain Drago." His men barked back, fighting the townsfolk with renewed vigor in order to avoid their captain's wrath. El Drago Pav. When the red-haired gold-loving pirate first arrived at the small island of the South Blue, he didn't expect his crew would have so much trouble. After the initial attack and burning of some of the island's houses, the shift in the battle started to change, with the townsfolk beginning to fight back and kill some of his men. Disgusted by their weakness, he decided to finally get himself involved. Taking a deep breath and channeling the power of his devil fruit, El Drago released a blue beam of sound towards a nearby building and the people inside. Voice missile. Walking through the rubble of the destroyed building and threatening his men, El Drago was proud to see the battle shifting towards his side again. Now feeling content, the redhead pirate decided to leave the fighting to his men and take a casual stroll of the island his crew was raiding. However, when passing the windows of an abandoned shop, he noticed the shining of his favorite substance in the world, gold. Breaking the glass, Drago ran towards the pile of gold, rubbing the precious metal against his face lovingly. Unfortunately, Drago's love of gold proved to be his undoing because he was so absorbed in his greed he failed to notice the blonde boy that dropped from the store ceiling and stabbed him directly in the back. "Normal Pav." "Ah!" screamed the pirate captain in pain before he grabbed the blonde teen on his shoulder and threw him across the room, knife and all. "Damn, I missed," Naruto cursed in his head. His plan to lure El Drago into the building and stab him to death was going well, but he was just a few inches off. Naruto had followed his father's teachings of staying informed on the bounties of criminals in the South Blue and knew from his bounty poster how obsessed El Drago was with gold. The idea of using this to lay a trap for the cat-like man seemed sound and a much better alternative to fighting him head-on. "You little brat, I'll cut you to shreds," he growled, dashing towards Naruto in a blind rage, golden claws primed to rip his face off. It was only through quick thinking, instinct, and a little luck that Naruto decided to once again rely on his smaller stature to slide in between El Drago's legs in order to cut his ankles. The attack appeared to have the same results as before, causing Drago to kneel in pain. Knowing that this was his best chance to finish off the captain of the invading crew, Naruto ran towards the kneeling El Drago with his knife primed to end his life. Unfortunately, today just wasn't Naruto's day because the boy found himself running head first into El Drago's gaping mouth that was charging an all-too-familiar voice missile attack. The blue beam of sound hit Naruto like a freight train, sending him through the wall of the store and into the street, his flight only being broken by a nearby fruit cart. Almost all Naruto could feel at the moment was pain. His body was bruised all over, with his left arm mangled and broken from his fall. El Drago walked towards the body of his downed opponent with a bloodthirsty smile on his face, stomping on his injured left arm. Ah! Naruto screamed, feeling the bones in his arm beginning to crack under the weight of El Drago's boot. I can't believe a brat like you was able to make me bleed. Growled out the captain before kicking the blonde in the ribs in anger, forcing more screams from the boy's throat. Picking up Naruto's beaten body by his neck, Drago lifted his clawed hand and readied himself to end the young boy's life. Any last words, kid? Naruto whispered with his eyes closed. What was that, kid? He asked, bringing Naruto's face closer to his ear. I said I'll see you in hell, bastard. He yelled, opening his eyes and stabbing El Drago in the throat with a jagged piece of wood he was hiding in his right hand. Oog! Came the gargled scream of El Drago, desperately trying to rip the makeshift shiv from his throat. However, in doing so he only made the bleeding worse, causing him to start to lose blood at an accelerated rate. Naruto would remember this moment for the rest of his life. Someone's first kill was rarely pretty, but being a 13-year-old and watching someone you stabbed bleed to death would definitely stay with the blonde. After El Drago fell face first on the ground unresponsive, Naruto knew without a doubt he was dead. Shakily standing up and cradling his broken arm, Naruto looked around at the destruction of the neighborhood his fight with Drago caused. However, when looking at the rubble of the destroyed shops, Naruto noticed one of the fruits from the broken cart begin to change. The previously ordinary plum turned a bright green and developed circular patterns. Naruto knew from the stories that this was a devil fruit, most likely whatever fruit Drago ate, seeing how he had no use for it anymore. Should I eat it? He thought, knowing how rare fruits were and how this was a rare opportunity. What am I thinking, taking the power of a man I just killed? For God's sake, his body wasn't even cold. Then again, when will I get another chance to eat one? I can't afford to be picky, plus even though he was a bastard, his fruit, whatever it was, gave him crazy destructive power. Finally making up his mind, Naruto picked up the plum devil fruit and took a big bite. Nearly throwing up at the disgusting taste, Naruto muscled through, eating the fruit whole. Walking away from the destroyed neighborhood, Naruto was hoping he could find a good place to hide for the rest of the invasion. He had done his part and was sure that the others could handle whatever remained of Drago's crew without him. Maybe after this is all over I can see what this power is all about. He thought, loving his plan, especially now that it meant he could get some much needed R&R and hopefully medical attention. Boy, you stop right there! Yelled an unfamiliar but extremely angry voice behind him that immediately dashed any dreams Naruto had for avoiding any more fighting. Turning towards the owner of the voice, Naruto met the glare of a well-built man that resembled a Native American and had a large sword in hand. You're the one who killed Captain Drago, weren't you? The man asked, putting two and two together after seeing El Drago's unmoving body and Naruto's shaggy blood-stained appearance. Not seeing a point in lying now, seeing he was caught literally red-handed, he decided to just be honest. Yay, it was me. What are you gonna do about it? You guys chose to attack my home, so you'll find no mercy from me. He threatened, mustering up all his confidence in the hopes he'd just take the body of his deceased captain and go. You little shit, you just ruined my payday. Galas the mercenary always gets paid, so now I'll have to kill you and take my salary from your little town. Threatened the now named Galas, who charged at Naruto with his massive sword, intent on cutting the boy in half with an overhead slice. Knowing that he was in no condition to dodge, Naruto desperately tried to draw in the power of his devil fruit to save himself. Feeling a tingling sensation overcame his body, Naruto took a deep breath and the energy trapped inside himself began to awaken. Voice missile! He screamed with all his might, releasing a beam of sonic force at Galas. Unlike El Drago, his beam was a deep red and trumped the size of Drago's almost 3 times over. Once his attack was released, Naruto fell on all fours and began throwing up blood. His throat muscles were raw. Obviously not being able to withstand the full force of his fruit's power yet took a toll on him. When he finished puking, Naruto lifted his head and went wide-eyed, seeing the destruction he caused. A shoulder-width trench was now cut into the street and seemed to go on for 3 blocks, with Galas' slightly charred and unmoving body at the end of it. Every window for each shop also seemed to have broken due to the power of Naruto's powerful voice. Awesome, now I'm taking a nap, he thought seconds before falling face first onto the street and going out like a light. Hours after the deaths of El Drago and Galas, the remaining members of his crew were being rounded up in the town square while our blonde-haired protagonist was on a bench being bandaged up by Granny Sancho alongside the rest of the injured. "OWW Granny, the brace is too tight, are you trying to kill me?" croaked the Uzumaki, his voice still sore from using the overpowered voice missile. Knowing that she couldn't in good conscience hit the injured boy, Sancho settled with giving him a heated glare. "And I told you, Naru, that the brace needs to be firm so that your arm heals correctly. If you have so much of a problem with my methods, I'm sure the baker could just cut it off and save you all this headache," she stated, knowing the threat of amputation would be enough to stop his complaining. With a now silent patient, Sancho was able to finish bandaging up the rest of Naruto's body to the point he could move on his own. Naruto and Sancho were able to walk together towards the crowd in the town square where the remaining 15 Drago pirates were shackled on a wooden platform with nooses around each of their necks. The townsfolk had agreed that a public hanging was a just punishment for the destruction of their home. Personally, Naruto felt they were getting off easy. "Any last words before you hang pirates?" asked the muscular town baker who had his hand on the lever that would end all of their lives. "You don't understand, you have to let us go. The captain said this island was only supposed to be a pit stop. She is still following us," exclaimed one of the pirates with the noose around his neck, who was crying like a toddler. Similar cries of mercy were being said by the rest of the captured crew, with yells of how she was still after them and how they were all doomed. "Tell us who is after you and maybe we'll let you and the rest of your comrades sail away peacefully," threatened the baker. "It was the captain, he said all we needed to do was pretend to swear loyalty to her and then we could make off with her gold. He never told us she would follow us all the way from the Grand Line for revenge," said another pirate who was weeping like a man who knew he had made the worst mistake of his life. "Who did you and your captain betray? Who is the woman that's coming for you?" asked the baker, again getting sick of the pirates' refusal to answer a simple question. While this interrogation was going on, Naruto was having a terrible headache, and for the last couple of minutes his ears were ringing. Every couple of seconds he could have swore he heard a distant voice that almost seemed to be singing. "She is one of the pirates that controls the ocean. Arguably the most powerful woman in the world. Big." Whatever the pirate was going to say next was drowned out by noise that at first seemed like a siren alarm. It was only after a couple of seconds that the people of Katabami Island and the captured pirates realized it was the sound of someone singing. It was a sweet but ominous song that only had one repeating word. "Ship, ship." Unlike when Drago and his men showed up on the island of Katabami when the Big Mom pirates arrived on their singing ship, there was no resistance from the townsfolk. Even people of the South Blue had heard stories of Big Mom and her infamous crew and knew better than to resist. So when members of the Yonko's crew demanded that they surrender their weapons to them, they relented immediately. It was only when he was able to see them up close did Naruto truly appreciate how strange Big Mom's crew was. Members ranged from fish people, long legs, long arms, and if he wasn't mistaken, a talking lion wearing shades and a suit. When all of the weapons were confiscated, the Big Mom pirates kneeled and urged them to do the same. Then Naruto began to hear the sound of heavy footsteps coming closer and a strong pressure in the air that nearly took his breath away. When Naruto first laid eyes on the pirate captain Charlotte Linlin, his first thought was how he had never seen someone so huge in his entire life. His own father, who was 6 feet tall, would have not even reached Big Mom's waist. Big Mom was a large, obese, and buxom woman with a very wide mouth and full lips covered in deep red lipstick. Unlike a stereotypical pirate, Big Mom wore a pink dress with red polka dots, a black cape, and bicorn captain's hat. "Peckham's, Tamago, where are those traitors?" yelled the large woman, her voice echoing with authority. "Here they are, mama," responded 2 of her crewmen. One a man with long legs whose pants looked like an egg and the other being the talking lion. They were dragging the chained Drago pirates behind them, with each man looking like they were heading to the pits of hell. "Please show us mercy, we were only following our captain's orders," one of the men pleaded. "And where is your captain now, I wonder?" asked the Yonko. "He died during our raid of this island," another chained pirate confessed. "Well, I guess that changes everything. As long as that bastard is dead, I guess I can find it in my heart to forgive you lot," she said, her personality doing a complete 180. "You could?" the men asked hopefully. "Of course, you just need to answer this one question. Anything, Big Mom. Life or treat?" "What?" It's pretty simple, I'll forgive you and spare your lives if you give me a good enough treat to make up for it. We don't have any treats, but we do have lots of gold on our ship," stated one of the pirates, hoping for some form of compromise. The minute those words left the pirate's mouth, the unseen pressure from before returned, but with even more force. It was so strong that weaker townsfolk and children began to pass out. The captured pirates also began to release a strange cloud-like substance from their bodies. "Now that's unacceptable. I can't eat treasure, and if you don't have any sweet candy, I guess you all chose life," she told them before lifting one of her hands, grabbing the clouds, and ripping them from their bodies. After the clouds were severed, the men dropped to the ground like puppets with their strings cut, the life completely drained from their eyes. With the trash disposed of, Charlotte Linlin turned to address the townspeople. "Okay, now that those pests are handled, I want to know which of you killed El Drago?" At this point Naruto was sweating bullets. If Big Mom's reputation as a Yonko wasn't enough to scare him, then her recent display of power definitely was. Who in the world has the power to kill 15 men without even touching them? Not to mention how she did it so casually, like she was swatting a fly. "Now she wants me," he thought while looking around at the equally scared faces of the townspeople. Innocent people who would face this monster of a woman's wrath if he didn't confess what he did. Oh well, 13 years old is not a terrible age to die, he thought, lying to himself. "It was me, I killed him," he confessed, walking out of the crowd so that he could face Big Mom head on. The fact he had to tilt his neck upwards to look her in the face, however, was not helping. "You, a child, killed El Drago? I find that hard to believe. I tricked him with gold and was able to attack him when his guard was down. He didn't take me seriously until it was too late," Naruto told her, knowing how crazy it sounded that a 13-year-old boy could kill a grown man like Drago. Mama, serves the fool right. I tried to tell him his love of gold would get him killed one day. Listen kid, I can't hate you for killing Drago. He was attacking your town and you were defending it. However, he wasn't yours to kill, and doing so before I could properly punish him is an insult to my reputation," Big Mom explained to Naruto, whose head was down waiting for the killing blow. "However, I am merciful, so I'll extend to you the same deal I gave those other pirates, life or treat? The choice is yours." "He chooses treat," yelled Granny Sancho, running towards Naruto's side. Before Naruto could voice his complaints about Sancho getting involved, she cut him off. "Naruto here works for my restaurant where we have a dessert so delicious it'll make your head spin. So will that be proper compensation for his life?" "Oh, is that so? Okay. Bring me this dessert, and if it is as delicious as you say, then I'll spare this boy's life and leave this island peacefully." "Curry of Life Shop. What the hell is your problem, Granny?" Naruto screamed, shaking the old woman like a rag doll. "What do you mean what's my problem, kid? I just saved your life," Sancho yelled back, butting her forehead against Naruto's. "How by lying to one of the strongest pirates in the world? You promised her an out-of-this-world dessert when you and I both know all you know how to make is curry." That declaration seemed to hit home with Sancho, who turned crestfallen and began looking at the floor. "What was I supposed to do, let you die for helping save this town? You're like a grandson to me," she said, tearing up at the end. "Nice going, Naruto, you just spit in the face of the closest person you have to family left. All she wanted to do was stop someone she cares about from throwing their life away, and I yell at her for it." He thought, hating himself for being so dumb. "I'm sorry, Granny Sancho. I appreciate what you did for me, I just didn't want you or anyone else getting involved. Don't worry, we'll find a way to get out of this. You are one of the greatest chefs in the world, and if you can make a dessert half as amazing as your curry, then we'll be fine," Naruto said, wrapping the old women in a hug in order to calm both of their worries. "Thank you, Naruto-chan, I needed that. Now let's get cooking," she exclaimed, putting on her chef's hat in preparation. They had a dessert of a lifetime to make, and they couldn't afford to fail. 4 hours later, it took the help of 5 of Big Mom's men in order to carry the giant bowl of dessert from the Curry of Life shop to town square, where the impatient Yonko was waiting. Naruto approached her with as much courage as he could muster. "Thank you for waiting. Now I present to you Granny Sancho's signature dessert, the Sundae of Life Special," he exclaimed as he pointed to the bowl containing the monster of a sundae. The mountain of ice cream that got Big Mom drooling was a mixture of light green and dark red, covered in chocolate sauce, whipped cream, and a gigantic spoon to top it off. "It looks promising," she told them before grabbing the big spoon and taking her first bite of sundae. Sancho was watching her facial expressions, praying she would like the dish. Naruto however was charging a voice missile attack in case she didn't like it and he could at least get in a cheap shot before he was killed. It's so ah. Big Mom yelled as her mouth alternated between releasing streams of fire and cold wind almost as if she was some form of elemental dragon. Mama! Yelled her crew in concern, readying their weapons to kill the brat and old bag they believed had poisoned their leader, while Naruto was seconds away from releasing his sound attack before Big Mom's face morphed from one of pain and agony to extreme pleasure. It's so amazing. She finished with a yell, a big smile nearly splitting her face in two. In the blink of an eye she continued to shovel mouthfuls of Sancho's special sundae until not a drop was left. Why thank you Yonko-sama. Granny Sancho said, blushing happy her dish was so positively received, and just like that the tense nearly murderous atmosphere from before was gone and replaced with a friendly one. I haven't had a dessert that good in years. The hot and cool flavor was delicious, you must tell me the recipe. She demanded while rubbing her full stomach in contentment. It's pretty simple. Me and Naruto-chan decided to mix ice cream with my signature curry of life powder and balance it out with super cool mint ice cream. Explained the chef, beaming with pride that their act of desperation was able to pay off so spectacularly. Genius, and offering this great deserves a celebration. Men release the civilians, it's time for a tea party. The Big Mom pirates and the Katabami villagers partied into the late night. The villagers and pirates sang and drank as if they were old friends, with Big Mom in the center of it drinking sake and having seconds, thirds, and even fourths of Sancho's new dessert creation. Members of Big Mom's crew even volunteered to rebuild the businesses that were burned down in El Drago's raid. The looks on the shopkeepers' faces when they laid eyes on their new shops made entirely of candy was priceless. Naruto thought finishing his fourth plate of candy given to him by one of Big Mom's sons. He was a tall and slim man with a long tongue and a strange devil fruit power that let him turn anything into candy. Boy, Big Mom wants to talk to you. Another pirate told Naruto as he led him towards the town square where the Yonko was sitting on her candy throne. Naruto boy, I want you to join my crew, she said, not seeing the point of beating around the bush. This declaration froze Naruto, with those words being the last thing he would expect to come out of her mouth. Excuse me, you heard me right boy, my crew and I are leaving this island in the morning and I want you to come with us. Speaking to the blonde as if he was a complete idiot. Why? Well, for one, you have Drago's devil fruit ability, which I've been interested in acquiring for some time now. Wait, how did you know that? He asked, wondering if she could read his mind. He had been careful to avoid the topic of the devil fruit when describing Drago's death in order to have some form of a trump card in case things turned bad. She knew the whole time. How? He was racking his brain for any mistakes he made in his story. Don't worry about it, kid, I can't read your mind or anything. I didn't know you'd acquired his powers until you thought of attacking me when I was trying your boss's lovely dessert. She said casually, like she was talking about the weather and not a possible threat on her life. Wait, how did you? Intuition, my boy, you don't get to be a pirate for as long as I have without being able to detect attacks a mile away. Explained Lin, telling him a half-truth since she didn't expect a 13-year-old to understand the complexities of hockey. Oh, okay. So how about it, Naruto, do you want to travel the seas free under my banner or not? She asked while extending her large hand to the blonde 13-year-old. He stared at her hand for what felt like hours. Was this really happening to him? In one day he had killed a man, eaten a devil fruit, met a Yonko, and now that same Yonko was asking him to join her crew. He knew this wasn't a decision he could make lightly. If he agreed and joined Big Mom, he knew he'd likely never see Katabami Island again, and that would mean no more Granny Sancho. I could always ask her to come with me, he thought lamely, knowing that would never happen. Sancho had been born on this island and he knew better than anyone how heartbroken she'd be if she had to leave it and her shop behind. Naruto, however, couldn't relate. While he did carry a certain fondness for the island of his birth, but other than his pseudo-grandmother he had nothing keeping him here. His father, God rest his soul, was long dead and he never really connected with any of the kids his own age. While they dreamed of taking over their parents' shops or becoming poets, he'd always dreamed of a life of excitement and travel on the open sea somewhere. I'll never get a chance like this again. I can't pass this up, Naruto thought as he grabbed Charlotte Linlin's huge hand and shook it while giving her his signature Uzumaki smile. Yes, I'd love to sail under you, Capta. I mean mom. 4 years later location. Seducing woods on Whole Cake Island. Come on Naru, why don't you want to play hide and seek with me? Asked a 9-year-old girl with light hair and pigtails who was giving a cute glare to the older blonde. We've been over this pudding, my job is to be your guardian not your playmate. Exclaimed the blonde for what felt like the umpteenth time. The 4 years spent under Big Mom proved good to Naruto, who now at the age of 17 stood at 6 feet 2 with a good amount of muscle on him. Much to his displeasure, he was forced by Tamago to wear a black suit highlighted with Big Mom's favorite color pink. It was only through kicking and screaming on his part that he wasn't required to wear that damn tie to go with it. Come on, just one game won't kill you, would it? I promise not to tell mama. She begged while giving him her best puppy dog eyes. Yay, one game won't kill me, but if I take my eyes off you for 1 second and you get hurt, your mom definitely will. Remember what happened last time? Naruto said, pointing to the 3 horizontal scars on both his cheeks. He got those last year when Pudding wandered off and decided to try and make friends with a wild tiger that wanted to make her its lunch. It was an accident, I thought it was friendly, she said lamely, looking at her feet in shame. Naruto affectionately rubbed her head, not wanting to make the younger girl sad. I know you did, I just need you to understand that it's my job to look after you and I really don't want you to get hurt, Pudding, he said in order to try and lighten her spirits. Charlotte Pudding still looked down sadly, hating that memory and the fact her foolishness had gotten Naruto hurt. Even though he said differently, Naruto for years now had been a constant playmate and companion for her and a lot of the younger Charlotte children close to his age. Come on Pudding, enough moping, how about we have a race to see who can make it to the end of the forest faster? He suggested as he gave himself an early start while keeping Pudding within looking distance. Hey, that's cheating, the 9-year-old whined, running at top speed in order to catch up, which Naruto easily let her do. He made sure the race was neck and neck until they passed one of the many seducing wood bridges and a large creature bursts through the water with a roar. Eek! Screamed Pudding as she hid behind Naruto for protection, who for some reason had a blank expression on his face. Hello Praline, what is it? Asked the blonde in a monotone voice to the creature that revealed itself to be a female mermaid. Oh Naruto, you're no fun, pouted the now named Praline. Charlotte Praline was Big Mom's 29th daughter and a hammerhead shark mermaid. Big sis, why can't you ever say hello like a normal person? Pudding whined, sick of her older sister's explosive entrances always scaring her half to death. It's in my nature, little sister, and I have to make sure your little bodyguard is on his toes. I would hate for you to get hurt because Blondie over here was getting lazy, she teased, hoping to get a rise out of her or Naruto. Naruto isn't lazy. He's a great guardian and would never let me get hurt, Pudding said hotly. If there was one thing Pudding was sure enough to bet her life on, it was Naruto's willingness to put his own well-being on the line to protect any member of the Charlotte family. Calm down Pudding, I was only playing, Praline joked, always loving being able to get underneath her baby sister's skin. Anyway Praline, is there a reason you're here? Naruto asked, interrupting their sisterly banter. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, Peckham's, Tamago, and Brûlé are preparing for an ingredient hunt and they asked for you personally. Ingredient hunting was a common activity for the Big Mom pirates, created in response to the Charlotte matriarch's unique eating disorder. In random intervals, Mom would become obsessed with a particular food or dish and would throw a tantrum if she didn't get it. What really made this disorder so scary was that the amount of time between when she'd request her food and go nuts was completely random. Sometimes she could wait days, while others waiting anything more than 5 minutes would result in a small town being completely leveled. Wait Naruto, you can't go now, you promised to take me to Cacao Island and try my new chocolate recipe, complained the teen, hating the idea of time with her best friend being cut short. I'm sorry Pudding, but this must be important if they asked for me. Anyway, look at the bright side, if I find an ingredient that's super delicious I can bring it back here and you could add it to your chocolate recipes, he told her, knowing that would entice the young chocolatier. Really, you mean it? She asked hopefully. Of course, you know Naruto Uzumaki never breaks his promises. So what ingredient are we looking for this time, Captain Humpty Dumpty? Naruto joked, using his personal nickname for the long-legged, egg-wearing pirate currently steering the ship. It's a high-class ingredient said to have gone extinct, the legendary rainbow fruit bon. Tamago explained. Wait, but if it's extinct, then what makes you think we can find it? Said to be and actually extinct are two completely different things, Naruto, remember that. Through our black market contacts we've heard rumors that the rainbow fruits are native to a particular island in the Isle of Biotopes where they're being coveted by wild beasts called troll Khans. He explained to the 17-year-old. The isle was a natural phenomenon in the New World where over 30 seasonal islands of various sizes were drawn together in one electromagnetic-rich region where they shifted around one another randomly. See, that's where you come in Naruto. As our crew's human radar, it's gonna be your job to guide us through this island maze and detect which island those loud apes are on," said a new voice that belonged to a tall female that was affectionately rubbing Naruto's scarred face with her long nails. Big Mom's eighth daughter Charlotte Brûlé was a woman that towered over Naruto and had a dark nose, light hair, and a prominent scar that stretched across her face. Figures, sometimes I feel like just an overgrown metal detector, Naruto thought bitterly, since aside from being the occasional guardian, playmate to the Charlotte children, this was his main role on the crew. You see, ever since he stepped foot on her ship, Big Mom had been pushing Naruto to unlock the hidden potential of his fruit. The process was slow going, seeing how the first year of having it all he could do was vaguely hear things yards away and launch sound beams that tended to hurt his vocal cords when used too often. Now he could detect enemies over 200 miles away and get a rough number of how many there were, putting all observation hockey user under Big Mom's banner to shame. He learned to do this by training himself to be able to release continuous harmless sound waves that bounced sonographic images in his head. It was a technique he liked to call echolocation. Echo map. He yelled as he released several bursts of sound that reflected off the sea and formed a grid-like mental map of the ocean around him. Following his directions to the letter, Naruto and the rest of the Rainbow Fruit search party landed onto a summer forest-covered island that they were positive had the rainbow fruit they were seeking. The small retrieval party of Naruto, Tamago, Brûlé, Peckham's, and about 10 other Big Mom pirates had disembarked and were treading through the island's forest when Naruto stopped mid-step. "What is it, Naruto Gao?" Peckham's asked with his signature verbal quirk. "Everyone scatter," yelled the blonde, causing the group of just over a dozen pirates to immediately jump away from their current spot. Their trust in the Uzumaki's words of warning proved justified when the forest path they were just taking erupted in a fiery explosion that would have blown them sky high. It only took a minute for the small party to find themselves surrounded by their would-be killers. A large number of men wearing black suits that were armed to the teeth. "Big Mom pirates, that was a warning shot. This is your last chance to leave this place peacefully. This island has just been discovered by Cipher Pole 8 and by extinction is property of the Celestial Dragons and world government," yelled the leader of the division, a tall man with dark black hair wearing a fancy all-white business suit that seemed to scream the fact he was a cocky asshole. Bullshit, Naruto thought, knowing that without his devil fruit enhanced hearing that attack would have killed them. "Cipher Pole 8, I've heard of you bunch. Your cell in particular is known for being the personal servants to the Celestial Dragons. How sad. Is that the reason you fools are here, to take the rainbow fruit to your owners?" Brûlé asked in a condescending voice, just having to look into the Cipher commander's eyes to see she was right on the money. "How dare you, the 8th Cipher Pole are the respected personal guards to the world nobles. Not like I expect filthy pirates like yourselves to understand. Men, kill them all," ordered the now red-faced captain confidently, thinking his large force of 100 trained CP8 agents would be enough to take on the inferior pirate force. Voice missile. Naruto screamed, blasting away another 5 CP8 agents that were replaced with another 6. "This is such a waste of time, they keep on coming," complained Charlotte Brûlé, who was as untouched as she was when the battle started. Her mirror powers reflected all attacks against her back towards their users. "Agreed, Bon," added Tamago as he used his enormous legs to kick away agents like soccer balls, and any one of them who got too close met the end of his cane. "These guys are just fodder, they're trying to stall us in order to swipe the fruit from under us, Gao." Peckham's growled, sending another CP8 agent flying with a powerful blow to the ribs. "Hey guys, I got a plan, why don't we play some games?" Naruto offered while dodging a clumsy punch from another CP agent and knocking him unconscious with a strong right hook. The 3 veteran pirates seemed to understand what he meant, if the smiles on their face were any indication. With no words needing to be spoken between them, Peckham's ran towards Tamago while shifting into his closed-shelled turtle form. Tamago threw back one of his long legs and kicked Peckham's shell like a soccer ball, aiming him at the unsuspecting CP8 agents. Tortue tir de football, French translation, turtle soccer shot. While Pekom's body was clearing a path of fallen bodies, Naruto ran into the mirror brûlée created in her outstretched hands. Taking a stance, she flung the hand-sized mirror containing the Uzumaki with all her might, sending the blonde through the previously cleared path of agents and deeper into the island's forest. Mirror, mirror, flying disc. Naruto flew through the forest for what felt like minutes until the mirror he was inside of shattered, setting him free but also making him fall to the ground face first. Ugh, I'll never get used to that move, he complained, rubbing the dirt off his face and using a quick echo map to find out which part of the forest brûlée threw him into. Okay, I'm in the northwest section of the biotope, and to the east of here there is a large pack of creatures surrounded a tree of some kind. That must be the Troll Kong colony, and the tree they're guarding must be the one that grows the Ranabo fruits, thought Naruto as he made his way towards the eastern part of the island where his prize waited. Just get in and out and this mission is over. Naruto was confident that with his powers guiding him he could avoid the Kongs altogether. What could possibly go wrong? 30 minutes later. Okay, everything could go wrong. Naruto screamed, dodging another boulder thrown at him by a Troll Kong. A four-armed gorilla-like beast 15 feet tall with green fur and pink skin. Note to self: a Troll Kong's sense of smell beats out super hearing every day of the week. Mentally he was kicking himself for overestimated his own abilities and getting himself in this mess in the first place. Naruto jumped, putting himself right into the one of the Troll Kong's faces before delivering his counterattack. Voice burst, screamed the young pirate as he released a sonic blast similar to voice missile but with a much wider diameter that covered the Troll King's entire body with red sonic energy. Not even having to look at the fried corpse of the beast he had just slain, Naruto continued running further up the large cliff where he could see the tree that held the multicolored fruit he wanted. I've got to get these guys off my back, otherwise they'll have me surrounded. I got it, weak point voice, he screamed, releasing a high-pitched wail that seemed to agitated the pursuing Troll Kongs enough to force them to hold their ears and flee. Yes, you better run, you overgrown chimps. Naruto Uzumaki is always prepared. Naruto gloated, making faces at the retreating Troll Kongs and approaching the rainbow fruit tree. Now all I have to do is cut down a few of these bad boys and bring them back to the gang and get off this shitty island. They should be finished handling those CP8 goons by now. Oh come on, Naruto thought before jumping back to avoid the attack that he knew was coming. Rankyaku, storm leg, yelled an unknown voice before a blue blade of air carved a groove into the ground where Naruto once stood. That's far enough, brat. I can't deny that devil fruit power was useful for getting rid of all those apes, but those fruits still belong to CP8. Said a man who through closer inspection Naruto realized was the white suit wearing commander of CP8 along with 4 of his other men. With the numerous cuts and bruises they had covering their bodies and the bloodstains visible on all their clothes, Naruto could safely assume the battle between them and his nakama didn't end in their favor. Let me guess, your guys were getting crushed by my friends, and you, being the brave leader and loyal lapdogs you are, abandoned your other comrades and followed me so you guys could steal the fruit and sail away like cowards. It was a tactical retreat, you little shit, yelled one of the CP8 agents angrily, not being able to stand being talked down to by a boy not even in his 20s. I don't expect a snot-nosed kid like you to understand cipher pull tactics. Call us whatever you want, it still won't change the fact you're going to die here and we're taking the rainbow fruit for ourselves. Threatened the cipher commander, who drew an ornate cutlass from his hip while his underlings drew their own weapons. They then used Soru to surround Naruto and kill him with a group attack. If there is one thing in this world I can't stand, it's overconfident people like these guys, Naruto thought, taking in a humongous breath that made his chest swell to epic proportions. Don't ever get cocky, he yelled, releasing an unbelievably loud scream that blasted in all directions. Voice bazooka. 3 cheers for Naruto for acquiring the rainbow fruit. Gao, said Pekoms, raising his mug of liquor in celebration, followed by the cheering of the pirate partygoers. The blonde himself was the center of the celebrations, despite the fact his once clean suit was now in shreds and he had light bruises covering his body. That CP8 commander threw a hell of a right hook, Naruto thought, sipping his mug of alcohol to dull the slight pain in his jaw from his fight against men from the 8th cipher pole. Lucky for him, the men weren't too much for the Uzumaki to handle, and when the last of the men were defeated, Brule, Peckhams, Tamago, and the rest of the search party were able to make it to the rainbow fruit tree and help him load them onto the ship. Which leads us to now on Whole Cake Island, where Big Mom threw a celebration tea party in honor of the search party's successful ingredient hunt and of course to make a feast of her new dessert. It turns out the rainbow fruit got its name not from its colorful appearance but from its juices that when evaporated formed a little rainbow. The female Yonko's high-class chefs were not only able to turn the famous fruits into a humongous gelatin the size of a house that Big Mom was currently devouring, but also make a strong fruit cocktail that Naruto and the majority of the other crewmen were currently guzzling down. Knowing that now was as good a time as any given the good mood she was in, Naruto finished chugging the rest of his cocktail and approached the large cluster of dining tables where the Charlotte family was eating. "Excuse me for interrupting your meal, Mama, but there is something I must talk to you about," Naruto said, respectfully giving the Yonko a serious look that unnerved Pudding, who was trying to attract the blonde's attention. "What is it, Naru boy?" asked Big Mom, half listening, more concerned with the delicious gelatin in front of her. "Mom, I've been a part of your crew for 4 years now, and..." "Has it been that long? It just seems like yesterday that you were a 13-year-old kid in the South Blue," she said, cutting him off, reminiscing fondly while still eating her dessert. "I know, and I never would have gotten this far without you. Which is why it pains me to ask you this, but I want to." "Stop right there, I know where this is going. You've done much for not only this crew but my family, Naruto, so my answer is yes." "Yes?" questioned the blonde, not knowing that Big Mom would be so understanding with his request. "Of course, you and Pudding's wedding can take place next month," stated the Yonko, causing surprised looks to appear on everyone within hearing distance faces and making Pudding blush with embarrassment. "What? I don't want to marry Pudding," he protested, slightly disgusted at the thought of marrying someone half his age. "Oh, so would you rather marry Praline? I never would have guessed you had a thing for mermaids, Naruto," Big Mom said with a laugh. "No, I don't want to marry any of your daughters, Captain," he told her with his face burning red. "Oh, so what do you want, Treasure? Because you can talk to Peckhams and Tamago about increasing your cut," she said, nonchalantly pointing towards the two pirates' general direction while still eating her gelatin. "No, Big Mom, I don't want women or treasure or any of that stuff," he yelled, getting sick of the Yonko's nonchalant attitude. "Then what is it, Naru boy? Speak up. Heaven knows I'm not a mind reader," she responded, her voice raising in irritation. "I'm trying to ask you if I can have your permission to leave your crew," Naruto yelled much louder than he intended to, causing every person on the island to hear his outburst. When those words left his mouth, everyone seemed to freeze in place and look towards Big Mom to see how she would respond. "What was that, Naruto? I think I may have heard you wrong," she said with a blank expression. All the previous joy in her face gone, her spoon left abandoned on the dining table, food for once being the last thing on her mind. "No, you didn't. I said I want your blessing to leave the Big Mom pirates," he repeated, staring Charlotte Linlin straight in the eye fearlessly. "Why, you ungrateful bastard, I ought to kill you right now," threatened a large brutish-looking man with a pointed beard and thin arms, Charlotte Cracker, Big Mom's 10th son. Before the sweet commander could carry out his threat, Big Mom released a blast of Conqueror's Haki in his direction that made him sit down and his biscuit armor crack slightly under the pressure. "Now, Naruto, why would you want to do that?" she asked, no longer using her affectionate suffix for him. "I just feel it's time, Big Mom. I mean no disrespect by it, the time I've spent sailing under you has been the best years of my life. I just want to go out on my own and achieve my own dreams. I've been looking up to you for years now, which is why I want to start my own crew and create my own reputation. I want to surpass you one day and become an emperor of the sea," he bellowed, sharing the dream he has been keeping to himself for years now with all the conviction he had. The once joyful party was now so silent and the tension so thick Dracul Mahawk could cut it with his great black sword. Nobody moved or talked, they just looked at Naruto Uzumaki, both impressed by the balls he must have had to say those words to Big Mom's face, but also in sadness knowing the cheerful blonde pirate would soon be a bloody smear on the ground. Big Mom stood from her throne and walked towards Naruto, both pirates refusing to avoid eye contact. "If you were anyone else, I'd already have killed you for even making me think you were planning to leave the crew, you know that, right?" "Yes, I do," he stated matter-of-factly, causing Big Mom's eyes to soften ever so slightly. It's only due to your years of service to the Big Mom pirates and my family personally that I'm giving you an alternative to the roulette of punishment," she stated, causing the Uzumaki to breathe an internal sigh of relief. "Instead, you will go through a trial by combat against a champion of my choosing. If you win, you are free to leave. Naruto, it's not too late for you to surrender. If you apologize, maybe Mama could forgive you," Pudding begged Naruto, who was doing stretches to prepare himself for the battle to come. "I told you before, Pudding, I'm not backing down. I need to fight this fight. But what if Mama chooses Cracker? He is already angry, and you and I both know you can't beat him." Naruto nodded at that. Even he wasn't so cocky in his abilities to think he was anywhere close to beating someone on Cracker's level, but that wouldn't get him to forfeit, especially without even trying. "It doesn't matter, I'm not giving up. No matter what, I'll find a way to win." "Do you really want to leave us that badly?" Pudding lamented, not being able to look Naruto in the face. How was she supposed to root for her best friend to win a fight if winning it meant he wouldn't be a constant in her life anymore? Sensing her sadness, Naruto gave her a hug and lifted her head so he could look her in the eyes. "Pudding, it's not like that. I don't want to leave because I hate you guys. I need to so that I can accomplish my dream. I know it sounds selfish, but I just know if I'd keep my dream to myself and let it die, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. It's like your mom said, pirates should never compromise for something they want and should take it with their own hands." His monologue seemed to cheer up Pudding, who shook her head with tears in her eyes, not trusting her voice at the moment. Seeing that she was okay, Naruto turned his back on his female companion and made his way towards the circular clearing Mom had designated as the fighting arena. It was finally time. The Emperor herself was standing in the center of the arena with the various Big Mom pirates surrounding the area, waiting to watch the fight to come. "So who am I going to fight?" "That would be me, Naruto," said the Yonko, who began cracking her knuckles. "What? You heard me, boy. If you're so set on leaving my crew, it's me you're going to have to fight. The rules are simple. If you are able to leave a scratch on me, then you're free to go. Deal?" That deal seemed almost too easy. If I was fighting anyone besides a freaking Yonko, Naruto thought, knowing that he'd have to pull out all the stops if he wanted to hurt Big Mom. "Ah!" Naruto yelled, running towards the Yonko before unleashing his signature sonic blast directly at her face. Voice missile. Unfortunately, the blast proved nothing to the female captain, who effortlessly swatted the blast away with the back of her hand before rushing towards the smaller boy with surprising speed and delivering a haymaker towards his direction. Even though the blonde was able to dodge the wild haymaker that left a crater in the ground he once stood on, he was still sent flying by Big Mom's attack. Just the wind pressure of her attack is this powerful, he thought, finally able to find his footing and release another sound attack. This time he released a series of smaller sound bullets from his mouth that peppered the Yonko in a series of smaller explosions. Machine gun voice. When the smoke cleared, Big Mom was no worse for wear. His attack did little but get her clothes dirty from the dirt it kicked up. "Is that the best you have, boy? I'm almost disappointed," he taunted the Yonko, who was immediately confused by the smirk that appeared on Naruto's face. "No, that wasn't my best, that is," he said, pointing to the cloud-like ball of energy that was hovering over Big Mom's head. "When I first yelled at the start of this fight, I was actually releasing a cloud of sound above you. My voice echoes inside the cloud, reverberated and amplifying inside. Now my voice will strike down like lightning from the sky." Thunder voice. The cloud of noise burst, releasing thunderbolt-like blasts of sound that struck the female captain from above, kicking up a tremendous amount of dust. Naruto was breathing hard on all fours, exhausted from the strain of using his most powerful sound attack, showing on his sweat-covered face. "That was a good effort, Naruto. If I was anybody else, that attack might have wounded me," said the feminine voice of Big Mom, who was standing in the exact same spot as before, the only difference being her outstretched palm. She blocked it. She used her palm as a lightning rod and withstood the force of my thunder voice with just the palm of her hand. This realization almost broke Naruto's will to fight. Naruto could only smile at the absurdity of his captain. In the bizarre seas of the Grand Line and New World, she truly was a monster amongst monsters. What could he do to hurt her now? He'd just used up his ace in the hold technique, and judging by the pain in his throat, he knew he wouldn't be doing any more voice attacks for a while. Desperately, Naruto reached into the waistband of his destroyed suit and pulled out his butterfly knife, a present from Pudding that he rarely used, but now he couldn't be happier to have. Drawing in whatever voice power he had left, Naruto covered the blade of the butterfly knife in a bubble of high-frequency sound waves that caused the blade to hum with power. Soprano voice cut, he yelled, appearing in front of Big Mom in an impressive burst of speed and trying to cut her down. Like the thunder voice before it, Big Mom blocked the sound-enhanced knife with the palm of her left hand, the grinding friction of her blade against her inhuman skin hurting his ears. Having enough of this farce of a fight, Mom retaliated with an open palm slap with her right. This blow caused Naruto to fly from the center of the arena all the way to the outer edge, with his body almost crashing into the spectators. He was unconscious before he hit the ground. Naruto woke up with a killer headache alongside a terrible pain on his bandaged chest. What happened? He thought, groggy looking around, noticing that he was in a room of a ship. Wait, I remember now, I was fighting Big Mom and I lost. He remembered as he made his way towards the door leading to the main deck, wondering what was going on. He had to squint when he opened the door, his eyes not yet adjusting to the sunlight. Feeling better, Naruto-ban? Tamago asked, gesturing towards the seat for the table on the deck while brewing Naruto a cup of tea. Not really, Tamago, can you please tell me what happened after I got knocked out? Big Mom beat me, so what am I doing on this ship? Did she send you guys on a ship with me so you could kill me quietly without anybody knowing? He rambled, firing off question after question at the French long-legged tribesman. Calm down, Naruto-ban, if you take a breath I will explain everything. He told the blonde, handing him the pink cup of tea which he drank quickly. Okay, I'm sorry, please tell me. For starters, your fight wasn't a loss, Naruto-ban. While Mama did knock you out, your last attack was able to slightly cut her hand, which made you a free man. Tamago explained, holding up his hand to stop Naruto from interrupting. Mama, seeing you had succeeded, was angry at first but then laughed, saying a deal was a deal, and ordered me and some other men to heal you and take you from Whole Cake Island. She also wanted me to give you this. He finished, handing Naruto a scroll with Big Mom's signature Jolly Roger seal. Opening it, Naruto read the contents of the letter. Dear Naruto, don't for a second think I've forgiven you for leaving my crew. It's only due to my honor as a businesswoman that I decided not to go back on our agreement and let you go out on your own. From this moment on, you're no longer a part of the Big Mom Pirates, so don't come calling me with your tail between your legs if you get in trouble, got it? Because of your stupid rebellious nature now it looks like I'm going to have to find another guardian for my younger children. A shame, for some reason my idiot kids formed a liking to you. Hell, Pudding wouldn't stop blubbering when she thought my little love tap killed you. Anyway, try to keep your nose clean on the Grand Line, kid. Not all the pirates out there are as forgiving when it comes to being slighted as I am. Good luck, Brad. Sincerely, Charlotte Linlin aka Big Mom. P.S. I left you a special going away present on your chest just so you never forget where you came from. Naruto teared up slightly, removing the bandages around his chest and looking at his left pec muscle where Big Mom's signature lipstick skull Jolly Roger was placed. Right above the heart where it should be. He lamented, proud that he had a mark to remember his times under the Yonko that changed his life so much. So Naruto, do you have anywhere special you want us to drop you off at? Gao asked Peckham's. Yay, I have an idea. South Blue, Karate Island. Are you sure this is the right place, Naruto-ban? Yay, this island is famous in the South Blue for being a place where martial artists of all disciplines come to sharpen their skills. This place is perfect for me to train myself. As I am now, I know I wouldn't last long in the Grand Line, so I need to grow before I can think of starting off on my own. Whatever you say, Naruto, we'll be watching you when you make your debut on the Grand Line. Gao said Peckham's before him, and Tamago sailed off, leaving Naruto Uzumaki on the dock alone. Naruto stared at the ship as it disappeared into the sunset while clenching his fists in motivation. Don't worry, I'll start my journey one day, and when I do I'll surpass all of you, Tamago, Peckham's, even you too, Mom. Hiya! Naruto yelled, giving the tree in front of him a hard roundhouse kick that dented the tree and sent its leaves scattering to the floor. Now at 22 years old, our blonde protagonist now stood 6 feet 6 with his blonde hair slicked back while wearing loose shorts that had a tiger stripe design and a dark orange tank top. Not good enough. Try it again, but this time rotate your hips in order to build up more force. Yelled an older man. Judging by his appearance you could tell the man used to be a fighter. Standing at 7 feet 2 with a well-built frame, bald head, slight wrinkles, and an eye patch, this wasn't the type of old man you'd want to mess with. Yes, Sagat-sensei. 1. Naruto told his master before delivering another roundhouse kick towards the tree. Following his advice, Naruto's kick this time carried a lot more force. It was strong enough to not only make the tree split in half but uproot its very trunk. Taking a calming breath, Naruto turned towards his teacher before giving him a bow of respect. "What do you think, master?" "My boy, I think you're ready," Old Man Sagat stated, throwing his arm around his younger protégé's shoulders and leading him out of the forest. "I have truly found a worthy successor to my style in this kid," Sagat thought proudly, not believing his luck that he would ever find a student like Naruto. When the blonde 17-year-old was first dropped off on Karate Island, he knew he had to find a real master to train under. All his years traveling under Big Mom and his final fight against her had hammered into him his weaknesses in close-range combat. He searched for months for the right master and style he felt would suit him best, and almost gave up hope until he coincidentally ran across Sagat training. Even for a man in his 70s, Sagat was still the definition of a beast when it came to the martial art of Muay Thai. He seemed to personify the art of 8 limbs by destroying several training dummies with his fists, elbows, knees, and shin strikes. That display of power was more than enough to get Naruto hooked on learning Muay Thai, and through several weeks of begging, harsh training, and finally acceptance, Naruto Uzumaki had become the personal disciple of the man once known as the god of Muay Thai, Sagat. When Naruto and his master exited the forest, they were assaulted by the sights and sounds of the large festival taking place on Karate Island. The reason for the lively festivities and Naruto's early morning training session under Sagat were one and the same. Today was the triennial King of Karate Island tournament. Like the name suggested, this was a martial arts competition that took place every 3 years, where the best martial artists of all disciplines gathered in order to test their skills against one another. Whoever won the tournament was then crowned Karate King and were given a prize of 5 million berry. The tournament should be starting in a couple of hours, so you should sign up before it's too late. "Alright, but master, I really want to thank you for looking out for me these past 5 years. Naruto said lamely, trying to put into words the amount of respect he had for this man who had become a pseudo-grandfather to him. "Don't waste my time with words, Uzumaki. If you want to really thank me, you'll win this tournament and show all those other weaklings the power of Muay Thai. Good luck in the tournament, I'll be in the stands watching." After giving his version of a pep talk, Old Man Sagat gave his pupil a pat on the shoulder before walking off and disappearing into the festival crowd. Taking a minute to let his master's words of encouragement sink in, a confident smile appeared on the blonde's face. Now he knew he was ready. Naruto passed through the festival crowd, making his way towards the sign-up station. "Name, age, and fighting style, please?" asked an old monk with a clipboard. "Naruto Uzumaki, 22 years old, and Muay Thai. 2. Okay, you'll be competing in Block D and your first match will be in 2 hours. Here is your participant number," the old monk said before handing Naruto a piece of paper with the number 54 on it. "Thank you," Naruto said, taking his participant number and heading into the fighting temple where the participants were gathering. "Finally, I was wondering when you'd show up, Naruto," said a male voice directly behind him. Naruto recognized the voice immediately and smiled before turning around and to face the man that had been his rival for years now. "I was wondering the same thing, Idio," he said, bumping fists with the long-arm tribe member. Naruto and Idio's rivalry had began around 3 years ago during the last King of Karate tournament. Naruto at the time had ignored his master's advice and decided to compete in the tournament in order to see how he measured up against other martial artists. It seemed Idio had the same idea because he also decided to compete. As 2 of the youngest participants at the time, they had formed a bond and promised one another to meet in the finals. Unfortunately, Naruto had lost in the preliminaries to a giant of a man and his strange boxing, yoga, and kickboxing fighting style. 3. Idio had lost as well to a more seasoned opponent, and their losses had fueled the duo to train all the harder. Which leads us to present day, where both martial artists were chatting and gorging themselves on the free food provided in the temple's mess hall. "So what block did they put you in?" Naruto asked, eating his 3rd bowl of curry. "Block B, it should be easy, none of my competition looks all that tough," Idio said confidently, biting into a chicken leg. "That's good, since I'm in Block D, that means we won't have to fight each other in the preliminaries." "That's great, when I beat you I wanted to be in the finals," Naruto said confidently, giving Idio a challenging stare. "We'll see about that, Uzumaki." All I know is you better not lose to anybody but me. We will now officially begin the Triennial King of Karate tournament. This tournament is not only a tradition meant to honor the martial artists who first colonized this island but to determine the strongest martial artist in the South Blue. I would like to thank all 64 of you who decided to participate today. The rules are simple. All of you have been assigned to one of 4 blocks, and if you are able to win 3 matches in your block, then you will be amongst the 8 fighters allowed to enter the actual tournament. Fights in these preliminary rounds will last no more than 3 minutes, and if a fighter faints, falls out of the ring, or surrenders, they will lose and be eliminated. Your participant number will decide the order of your first match, which will begin now. I wish you all luck for the battles to come. 4. The head monk monologued before bowing to the crowd and officially starting to preliminaries. Naruto's first match. Okay, we will begin the preliminary matches for Block D number 54 and 53. Please step onto the stage. The referee instructed the 2 fighters. Naruto ascended to the fighting stage and locked eyes with his opponent, a huge stereotypical strongman with a black leotard and handlebar mustache. You might want to surrender, young man, or I'll have to crush you with these muscles, threatened the strongman, flexing his arm in a cocky manner. You have 3 minutes. Begin. The minute the referee announced the start of the match, Naruto leapt at the strongman, leading with his right knee. Tiger knee. Naruto's knee connected with the muscled man's face like a wrecking ball, breaking his nose with an audible crack. The force of the blow was so strong it sent the strongman head over heels and flying a couple feet out of the ring. Number 53 has been sent out of the ring. That makes number 54 the winner. 1 down, 2 more to go. Naruto thought, cracking his neck and popping his knuckles, ready to tear into the rest of his competition. The next 2 matches for Naruto ended much the same way as the first, with Naruto destroying his opponents in 1 or 2 well-placed Muay Thai strikes. While not able to watch Idio's matches in person, was happy to find out that he had won all his matches as well, and they'd both made it to the semifinals. Official karate tournament outside arena. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for waiting. It was a grueling process, but now out of the starting 64 participants, 8 truly exceptional martial artists have emerged to fight for the title of King of Karate Island. The head announcer, a blonde-haired man in a black suit, yelled, causing the crowd of people to applaud. Now to begin our first match, we have one of the winners of Block D, Naruto Uzumaki, a fearsome Muay Thai practitioner, versus Block A winner, the wrestler Red Cyclone Zangief. Naruto's opponent, like his first, was a tall giant of a man that stood at 7 feet tall and was close to 400 pounds of pure muscle. The intimidating wrestler's wardrobe only consisted of red wrestling shorts with a gold belt wrapped around his waist. Zangief introduced himself in a language that was completely foreign to Naruto, but he got the gist of what he was saying. Hello, my name is Zangief, no hard feelings, but I must break you. Naruto thought, raising fists and entering his opening Muay Thai stance. Now let the first round of the tournament, Naruto Uzumaki vs Zangief, begin. Naruto vs Zangief. Naruto made the first move by leaping towards Zangief with his knee extended, hoping to have similar results as his first match. Tiger knee. Zangief proved to be far more agile than you'd expect from a man of his size by performing a 2-step spin move that allowed him to dodge Naruto's knee attack and deliver a open palm strike towards his face. Banishing flat. The blow was powerful enough to send Naruto flying across the arena with blood flying from his mouth. He righted himself in midair and was able to land on his feet before he flew out the ring. While Naruto was recovering from the wrestler's slap, Zangief ran towards the downed Uzumaki, hoping he could quickly wrestle him into submission. When Zangief was in arm's length of Naruto, he surprised the wrestler by jumping into the air and executing a rising uppercut that struck him right in the chin. Tiger uppercut. The move struck Zangief with so much force that the red-clad wrestler was knocked off his feet. Sorry big guy, but you're done, Naruto thought, knowing from experience that a direct hit from his tiger uppercut would lead to an instant knockout. Unfortunately for our favorite blonde, Zangief was far from done and he'd unintentionally fallen into his trap. While Naruto was still airborne due to his rising uppercut, Zangief was able to wrap his enormous arms around his waist. Sorry comrade, but this battle ends now. The bear of a man then proceeded to execute 2 German suplexes that smashed Naruto's head into the arena floor and finished the combo by jumping in the air with Naruto in his arms and doing a spinning piledriver. Final atomic buster. When the smoke cleared from Zangief's technique, the large wrestler emerged from the rubble unharmed while Naruto's body was buried in the ground headfirst. I can't believe it, folks. The Red Cyclone Zangief, in another brilliant show of wrestling, has literally buried his competition. If Naruto is unable to stand by the 10 count, this match will go to Zangief. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In an impressive display of strength and toughness, Naruto performed a kick-up that dislodged his head was from the concrete floor. The blonde Uzumaki surprisingly looked okay for a man who seconds before the crowd suspected of being dead. Other than some slight bruising on his face and a bloody mouth, he looked fine. Well, that sucked. My mouth was open when you made me taste concrete. I don't think I'll ever get the taste of it out of my mouth. Naruto joked before once again taking his Muay Thai stance. That move was supposed to finish you. I've used it to kill bears before. Zangief stammered, not understanding how one of his strongest moves could just be brushed off like that. I believe you, that attack was strong, but my sensei has been hitting me with blows worse than that for 5 years now. You'll have to do better than that if you want to beat me. Those words seemed to light a fire in the large wrestler, who gave Naruto a hard glare and entering into his own stance, ready to continue the fight. Round 1 was done and it definitely ended in Zangief's favor. However, the match was far from over. Naruto and Zangief found themselves in a struggle for dominance, with both martial artists performing a clinch with Naruto's hands on Zangief's shoulders and Zangief holding Naruto's forearms. Do you truly think you can best me at grappling, little man? Zangief taunted before he began flexing his arms and using his full grip strength to squeeze Naruto's arms. Now, if this was any normal fighter, the amount of pressure Zangief was exerting would be more than enough to break their forearm bones like toothpicks and have them screaming in pain. Naruto, however, wasn't a normal fighter and only smiled at Zangief's pointless act of strength. You ever wonder why a tiger's claws are hidden when they stalk their prey? Naruto asked the foreign man, more to himself than Zangief given the language barrier. Mere seconds later, Zangief began to experience a horrible pain coming his shoulders, so great that it made him kneel in pain and release the death grip he had on his arms. It's so that they can stay sharp, and when they dig into their prey there's no way for them to escape. Naruto explained with a predatory smirk on his face, tightening the hold he had on Zangief. Naruto's fingers were pressing so hard into Zangief's shoulder muscles that they were leaving deep indentations in his skin. Taking advantage of Zangief's vulnerable position of his current hold on him, Naruto grabbed the back of the wrestler's neck and pulled his face towards his already rising tiger knee. Naruto could hear the sound of Zangief's nose breaking and saw the geyser of blood come from it. Not showing any mercy towards him, Naruto finished his combo by delivering a viscous tiger uppercut to Zangief's exposed chin. Tiger genocide. His attack sent Zangief flying and landing in a heap on the far side of the arena, seemingly knocked out. Oh my goodness, can you believe it, folks? Naruto was able to completely turn this match around with a devastating Muay Thai combination. Can Zangief hope to recover? The announcer yelled excitedly, grateful he could witness such a high-level martial arts bout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, No! Yelled the powerful voice of Zangief, who with difficulty was able to get himself back on his feet. You are truly a worthy opponent, comrade. That move almost made me blackout. Zangief stated before flashing Naruto a bloody smile for finally being able to experience such an exciting match. Naruto didn't need to speak Zangief's language to tell what the wrestler was feeling. I feel the same way, big guy, and I'd love to keep this fight going, but we both know we can't. How about we both agree settle this match with our next move? Naruto asked Zangief while gesturing with his hands before he nodded in agreement. Naruto and Zangief slowly circled around one another, sizing each other up one last time and waiting for one of them to make the first move. Neither one of them could remember who made the first move, but 1 second later both Naruto and Zangief were airborne and on a direct path with one another. Cyclone Lariat, yelled Zangief, who was spinning around with his forearms extended, explaining his nickname due to him forming a miniature red cyclone. Tiger Raid, roared Naruto, unleashing a barrage of rapid-fire kicks so fast that they left shadowy afterimages. To the audience their clash lasted for only a moment, but to all the experienced fighters watching they all knew the fight was decided. Naruto and Zangief landed facing away from each other for a few moments before Zangief started swaying and toppled over like a tree. And there you have it folks, in a close, hard-fought match Naruto Uzumaki has been able to defeat the Red Cyclone Zangief. Exclaimed the announcer, lifting up Naruto's arm in victory while the EMTs carried Zangief away. As Naruto was in the hallway leaving from the arena, he found himself once again crossing paths with Idio, who he could tell by his was heading towards his own match. "Damn Uzumaki, you look like hell, don't tell me you lost already," taunted Idio. "Yay right, I won, my opponent was just strong. If I was you I'd start worrying about myself and getting to the second round. Don't worry, I'm more than ready. I'll do my part so that we can meet in the final round and once and for all see who's the strongest." The two fighters pumped fist before Idio walked past the blonde and onto the stadium floor. Folks, we will now begin the second match of the first round in this year's King of Karate Island tournament. This match will be between Idio from Block B, and from Block C we have Balrog. Both of these strong fighters have made quick work of their opponents in the preliminaries with their powerful boxing styles. I for one can't wait to see which one of them will reign supreme. I've heard a lot about your skills. Let's let the best man win, Idio said, extending his fist in greeting to Balrog, a very tall, heavy-built black man who was wearing blue boxing trunks, a tank top, and red boxing gloves. Balrog looked at Idio's extended fist skeptically before flashing a lopsided smile at Idio and extending his own fist. However, this gesture of sportsmanship was ruined by Balrog, who after touching gloves with Idio decided to headbutt the Longarm tribe member in the face. This sudden act of aggression shocked the crowd and Idio, whose head reeled back and blood flew from his mouth. The announcer quickly got between the two boxers and began scolding Balrog on how the match only begins when he says so and how next time a cheap shot like that will get him disqualified. This threat seemed to mean little to Balrog, who was busy scratching his armpits while Idio just wiped the blood from his mouth and gave him a death glare. Knowing that his words were falling on deaf ears, the announcer decided to just start the fight. Now let the second round match of this tournament, Idio vs Balrog, begin. Idio vs Balrog. Hoping to end the match early, Balrog rushed towards Idio like a mad bull and threw a right-hand straight punch. Dash straight. In one smooth motion, Idio leaned his head to one side, completely avoiding Balrog's, all while still glaring holes into the larger boxer. Is that the best you've got? Nothing but dirty tricks and predictable punches, what a disappointment. Uzumaki really lucked out with his opponent. I'll only need one punch to beat someone at your level, Idio stated matter-of-factly. Not taking Idio's critique of his boxing skills very well, Balrog began attacking Idio with a flurry of angry punches, praying that one would connect so that he could remove the long-armed tribesman's head from his shoulders. However, none of his punches were able to land and Idio was able to effortlessly weave around his sloppy punches until Balrog had to stop to rest. Listen, this match is over. Your punches may be strong but they're far too sloppy to ever touch me. Surrender now and it will be better for both of us. I have a worthy opponent I want to defeat in the finals and I don't want to waste my time on small fry like you. Those words, along with his inability to hurt his opponent, was just too much for Balrog, who began to go into an anger-filled trance. I'll kill you, Balrog screamed, rushing towards Idio at newfound speeds and throwing a combination of 5 savage punches that had enough force to crack the air around them like a bullwhip. Crazy buffalo. Sadly, Balrog's rage-based burst of speed still wasn't enough to catch Idio, who once again was dodging between his fists with ease. If anything, his angry assault would prove to be his undoing, because the massive boxer was so focused on trying to kill Idio that he failed to notice how he was being led to the corner of the ring. Idio ducked under the last of Balrog's punches before going around. The large boxer finally entered into his own boxing stance. Balrog, who at this point was beyond tired, simply did a 180 turn and guarded himself the best he could, hoping he could withstand whatever his smaller foe could throw at him and hopefully find an opportunity to retaliate. I've let you show me your best punches, so I think it's only fair I get to show you one of mine. I was going to save this one for the finals against Uzumaki, but this fight has been so boring I've just got to show this crowd something, Idio said while winding up his right fist before he threw it at Balrog's guarded face. Destruction cannon. The minute the punch connected, his fist exploded in Balrog's face, destroying his guard, and sending the boxer flying outside the ring. Wow, can you believe it, folks? Idio has just ended the match and sent Balrog flying with only one punch. While Balrog's boxing style was deadly, Idio's has shown to be on a whole other level. Naruto's second round match. Again, Naruto's fists hit nothing but air as his more agile opponent danced around his blows and countered with a high kick that snapped his face to the side. His opponent in the second round turned out to be a flamboyant man named Miguel who practiced a form of Okama Kenpo that mirrored salsa dancing. He wore a bright red bullfighter uniform and sported a face full of makeup that exaggerated his androgynous image. "Oh come on, you'll to do better than that from you, Naruto boy. This little dance of ours is proving to be quite boring, don't you think?" Miguel taunted, entering a salsa pose and extending his hand towards the blonde Muay Thai fighter. "Tiger knee," he yelled, leaping at the flamboyant fighter who was able to twirl around Naruto, and as Naruto was leaping past him he connected a powerful backhand to the back of Naruto's neck that nearly made him fall unconscious. Luckily Naruto was able to recover and create some distance between himself and the matador-themed Okama. Damn it, this guy is one slippery bastard. His style is like dancing where he predicts his opponent's every move and counters without any wasted movement. Naruto thought, breaking down what he'd learned of Miguel's martial arts style so far from their brief bout before rushing again at Miguel, who was prepared to counter and finish him off. "Which means I have to hit him with something I know he won't see coming." Naruto thought before he stopped on a dime and performed a front flip, leading with his right leg and using it like a knife to cut Miguel from his shoulder all the way to his waist. 5. Jaguar kick. Miguel's chest started gushing blood with his mouth open in a silent scream. Taking advantage of his weakened state, Naruto leapt forward and launched two thrusting knees that struck Miguel's chest and chin respectively, and sending both fighters airborne. Rising Jaguar. Naruto was able to land on his feet gracefully while Miguel hit the stadium floor in a bloody and unconscious heap. Can you believe it, folks? In a turnaround victory, Naruto Uzumaki was able to overcome Miguel's Okama Kenpo and come out on top. With this win, he has officially earned a spot in the final round. The announcer declared to the crowd, who exploded in cheers for the blonde brawler. Idio's second round match. Idio found himself on the defensive against the palm strikes of his second-round opponent. He was a serious-looking man named Snek who practiced what he called the biting snake fist style, which focused on open palm strikes that when he attacked created snake after images around his fists. Snek was a relatively tall man with spiky black hair, and he wore a custom snakeskin suit. "Snake fist. Anaconda barrage," roared Snek, delivering an even faster barrage of snake palm strikes that Idio had no choice but to put his guard up and endure the best he could. When Snek's hail of blows finally stopped, Idio tried to fight back with his signature destruction cannon, only for Snek to grab Idio's wrist before the fist connected and stop the attack in its tracks. Snake fist. Venomous bite. Idio began to feel all the strength leave his captured arm due to Snek's strong grip, and when he tried to fight back with his left hand, Snek performed the same move on his other wrist. "With both your wrists locked, you can't throw any more of those explosive punches of yours. This puts us at a stalemate, but since I was able to land more blows on you at the start, the judges will have no choice but to give me win by decision." Snek monologued, tightening his grip on Idio's wrist and keeping his fists by his sides. "You'd really be satisfied by winning your match on a technicality?" Idio asked, not believing any self-proclaimed martial artists would be okay with winning the tournament due to some cheap trick. Even Balrog, with all his dirty boxing, was willing to at least face his opponents head-on. "It doesn't matter the method, as long as I can win this tournament and get the prize money. It doesn't matter how I defeat you. I can hold you like this for the rest of the fight, be safe, and get an easy victory." Snek taunted, proud of his seemingly perfect plan. Crack, crack, wait, what is that sound? Snek thought before he felt an agonizing pain in his sides that made him release his hold on Idio's wrists and stagger back in pain. "What the hell, I had your wrist locked. There is no way you could have thrown a punch from that position," Snek said while on his sides and crouching on one knee due to the pain of feeling like his sides were just torn to shreds. "You're right, I couldn't. All I did was clench my fists as hard as I could before I twisted and grinded my knuckles into your sides. You should be proud. If you and I hadn't fought, I would have never invented this new killer move of mine. I think I'll call it the fist clench," explained Idio, who didn't give Snek a chance to recover and blasted him out of the ring with his signature destruction cannon. And there you have it, folks. In another crushing victory, Idio has defeated Snek of the biting fist and has earned his place in the final round. Now Idio and Naruto will both compete to see who rightfully deserves to be crowned this year's King of Karate Island. Naruto and Idio start at one another from opposite ends of the stadium floor. "Well, we did it, we both made it to the finals," said Idio. "Yep, you know it's not too late for you to give up." Naruto joked. "Yay, right, and missed the chance to finally kick your ass all over this island, no way." "Fine then, since you're so confident, how about we have a bet for if I win?" "What kind of bet?" "Nothing extreme. Listen, Idio, after today I'm leaving this island. I'm starting a crew and going to the Grand Line, but to do that I need strong fighters. How about this, if I'm able to beat you here today, you agree to come with me and join my pirate crew?" "I'll think about it, but you're gonna have to beat me first. There's no way I'm following someone weaker than me," Idio declared before taking a boxing stance while Naruto did the same. The time for small talk had passed. "Now ladies and gentlemen, the final round of this tournament, Idio vs Naruto Uzumaki, begin," shouted the announcer before he ran out of the arena as quickly as possible, knowing that a battle between these two would definitely be explosive. Naruto vs Idio. Tiger Knee. Destruction Cannon. Both fighters wasted no time and immediately collided with their signature attacks, the force of Idio's fist and Naruto's knee colliding, creating an explosion in the center of the arena that pushed both fighters apart. They clashed again and exchanged blows in a violent brawl without any special techniques, just pure hand-to-hand skills. Naruto dodged Idio's two-punch combo and countered with a spinning back fist that nailed the long-arm fighter in the jaw. However, Idio didn't take the hit lying down and connected with a strong liver blow that had Naruto spitting up blood. Several minutes later, Idio ducked under Naruto's roundhouse kicks and threw an explosive punch right into Naruto's face. "Enough of this. Stop holding back, Uzumaki," yelled Idio, who was breathing heavy and was covered in scratches and bruises from their fight. "What are you talking about?" asked Naruto, who also was covered in bruises and burns due to Idio's explosive punches. "This battle is going nowhere and I'm tired of holding back against you since you're not using all of your strength. I know you have a devil fruit power, Naruto, and that you've been training with it while practicing your martial arts. Listen, you're my rival and I've been training so hard so I could finally beat you and prove I'm the strongest. Now listen, this next punch of mine will be my last, and if you don't come at me with everything you have, I'm going to blow you away." Idio threatened before he got into a punching stance where his right hand started to shake and create smoke, his fist brimming with stored power. Seeing the serious look in Idio's eyes, Naruto decided it would be best to do what his rival said and give it his all. "Fine, you win, Idio. I wanted to beat you with just Muay Thai, but I guess there's no way around it. Prepare yourself," he yelled before he created a bubble of sound waves from his mouth that surrounded his body in red energy. He used this bubble to propel himself at Idio at supersonic speeds while leading with his knee. Jet Voice. Tiger Knee. Great Destruction Cannon. Naruto and Idio's final clash created an explosion that put their first to shame and created a dark smoke cloud that obscured the crowd's vision of the arena. When the cloud finally parted, a lone figure could be seen standing in the arena. When the last of the smoke finally blew away, the figure revealed itself to be none other than Naruto, who was standing over the fallen body of an unconscious Idio. Naruto wasn't faring much better by the looks of it, with the entire front of his body being covered in soot and second-degree burns. The blonde Muay Thai fighter stood as still as a statue for several seconds before he slowly raised both fists in silent victory before collapsing and joining his opponent in unconsciousness, the wild cheering of the crowd being the last thing he heard before everything went dark. After paying a visit to the infirmary to get their wounds treated, Naruto and Idio made their way to the docks while ignoring the shouts of praise from the townspeople congratulating them on their match. It turned out that even though Idio lost the fight due to Naruto's use of his devil fruit power, he was disqualified and the title of King of Karate Island was given to Idio. While not exactly happy with winning the tournament because of a technicality, the long-armed boxer still decided to take the prize money and the title in Naruto's place. When they made it to the docks, they faced the ship that they would start their journey with. It was a fairly small caravel-style pirate ship with a jet dial motor that allowed for extra speed. 6. Staring at his vessel, Naruto gave a silent thank you to Big Mom, who was nice enough to give him his last paycheck before sending him away. Being the frugal person he was after feeding himself for the last 5 years and buying the vessel in front of him, Naruto was still sitting on a pretty little nest egg of 50 million berry. Idio crossed his arms over his chest and gave Naruto a skeptical look. having second thoughts about starting a two-man pirate crew with his longtime rival. Hey Naruto, before I officially decide to join this little pirate crew of yours, I gotta know what is your end goal and why should I really want to join you? It's simple, really. My goal is to make it to the new world and make a name for myself and build a powerful crew. Then I want to amass enough strength so that one day I can achieve the legendary status of Yonko. I want to do what Whitebeard, Shanks, Kaido, and Big Mom have done and become a pillar for the new generation of pirates. Idio, I know that you're not satisfied with the amount of power you have now. Like a lot of martial artists, you want to make it to the top ladder of strength, right? Then join me and I swear the Grand Line will be filled with strong opponents. There you and I can grow strong enough to one day challenge the whole world. Naruto monologued, shouting at the end and giving Idio a smile that was full of conviction. Idio looked into Naruto's eyes, searching for any form of dishonesty before nodding his head and jumping onto Naruto's boat. Fine, let's go, Captain. The blonde pirate captain smiled, opening the sails and steering his ship into the horizon. The journey of the Whirlpool Pirates had officially begun. Snowpoint Island was widely known as the coldest island in the entire South Blue. Covered on all sides with snow that fell year-round and a tall mountain at its center. Snowpoint seemed no different than any other winter island you would find in the first half of the Grand Line. What separated this island from the rest was that Snowpoint was the mecca for all mercenaries in the South Blue. This fact made Snowpoint Island a perfect destination for people searching for powerful individuals to perform hits or, in Naruto's case, join his newly formed pirate crew. Which brings us to the present, where we find both Idio and Naruto on this particular island sporting winter coats and being surrounded by the unconscious bodies of several local mercs. Well, that was a waste of time. Naruto stated with a frown, annoyed by how weak all the mercenaries he has met so far have been. Granted, I wasn't expecting to find someone who could handle both myself and Idio at the same time, but come on, these guys went down like a sack of potatoes. He thought angrily. The plan when they disembarked was fairly easy. Naruto would carry around a fat stack of 10 million berry and challenge any mercenary to take it from him. Unfortunately, the few men that had been able to accept his challenge all ended up the same. So any other bright ideas, Captain? Idio asked casually, sitting on the beaten body of one of the mercenaries. Wanna go to the nearest bar and get drunk? Yo barkeep, another round over here, yelled a red-faced and slightly drunk Idio who was holding up his fifth empty mug of beer. Naruto, on the other hand, was still finishing off his second drink while staring at his crewmate in amusement, wondering how much more alcohol the long-armed boxer could consume before passing out. Hey old man, Naruto said to the bartender who was refilling Idio's drink. He was a short man with silver hair that looked to be around 60 years old. What is it, kid? Asked the barkeep. Listen, we're looking to hire the best mercenary possible for a job. You look like you've been around here for a while now, so do you have any clue as to who the top dog is around here? The barkeep scratched his chin for a second before responding. Well, out of all the killers in Snowpoint, the best and most well-known has to be the twins. The twins? Idio asked, ignoring his beer now that the conversation was about possible strong fighters. Yes, two brothers that are hired killers. They are mysterious. All we know about them is that they always kill their targets and no one who has ever seen their faces has lived to tell about them. The bartender explained in obvious fear, not wanting anything to do with the two well-known assassins. Great, they sound strong. Have you heard anything about where they might be now? Naruto asked happily, hoping the twins would prove worthy additions to his crew. Well, last I heard they were headed to Snowbelt Town to deal with a target. It's a big town near the center of the island on the side of a mountain. Gotcha, thanks for the tips, Gramps. Naruto said, leaving a few berry on the counter as compensation, putting on his coat, and heading towards the door with Idio following his lead. Wait, kid, you should be careful. Snowbelt Town is home to a marine base and word on the street is that the captain there runs it with an iron fist and will kill any unwelcome visitors on sight. Naruto gave no indication that he heard the old man's words of warning, the duo already leaving out of the front door. Are we there yet? Idio asked in an irritated tone with his arms wrapped around himself due to the cold. Apparently, the island's mountain chose this very moment to entangle them in a blizzard. No, said Naruto, also shivering slightly from the cold. Well, how long until we get there? Also, how do you even know where this town is? Idio asked, remembering that the old man had not given them a map. My voice fruit makes me a walking sonar, so stop worrying, I know we're heading in the right direction. Naruto explained to Idio, who just nodded, still not fully understanding his captain's strange powers. Don't worry, if we hurry we should be able to make it to Snowbell Town in around. Naruto said, not completing his sentence as he stared into space. Hey, are you okay? Idio asked his captain before the blonde suddenly took off in a seemingly random direction, ordering Idio to follow, and yelling something about how he could hear the sound of gunshots coming from the outskirts of the town they were heading to. Pav. This week seemed to have started so normally for me. It was just another day on the island for me and my brother, with the both of us counting our berry from our last assassination. Then we got the call on our personal transponder snail about another job. Apparently, our new client was a representative of a group of civilians from Snowbell Town. According to the voice, the rumors about the dictator-like marine captain that was stationed in that area were very true. The captain treated the town as his own personal kingdom, demanding offerings of money and food from the townsfolk for their continued protection from the despicable and seedy hired killers that made this island their home, completely ignoring the fact that any real mercenary wouldn't waste their time hurting civilians like them unless there was a big payday in it for them. The civilians knew they lacked the strength to take on the corrupt Marines that took over their town. However, not many of them were willing to leave the place many of them grew up in, so they decided to haul their money together and hire me and my brother to deal with the captain personally. With our understanding of the island's terrain, my brother and I were able to make good time as we reached Snowbell in just a few hours. After we arrived, my brother and I found a nice secluded location just outside the town's gates where we spent an entire day scoping out the entire town, specifically the marine base it held. From marine patrols, guard duty, and even sleep schedules, we factored in everything. The next day we decided to put our plan into action. It was high noon when the marine captain finally left the base to threaten the civilians in the town square. With practiced ease, both my brother and I took out our rifles and took aim at the tyrant captain before we simultaneously pulled our triggers. The resulting explosion was fairly large, but due to our aim, we made it sure that no one else was caught up in the blast. When the smoke cleared, we both expected to see either the smoldering corpse or just burnt chunks of our target. Imagine our surprise when the marine we thought should have dead appeared from the smoke without a scratch on him. Knowing that even a master of Tekai, one of the Marine 6 styles, wouldn't have been able to withstand that explosion with zero physical damage, making one fact abundantly clear to us at that moment. Our target, this seemingly corrupt but ordinary marine captain, was a devil fruit eater. He quickly proved our hypothesis when he nonchalantly turned and stared in our direction, seemingly ignoring the fact that we were several yards away and no normal person should have been able to spot us at that range. His counteract to me was unreadable. All I saw him do was extend his hand, and the next minute my brother was holding his bloody stomach in pain. Somehow he had launched an extremely fast and seemingly invisible long-range attack that was able to run through my brother from yards away. I rushed to my brother's side, trying my best to apply pressure to his wound so that he wouldn't bleed out. I was so focused on his condition that I failed to notice that we were surrounded by Marines with guns pointed at us. That Marine captain had somehow found us out and had set a trap for us this whole time. Knowing there was a slim chance that we could both escape given his injury, my brother gave me a wordless order to leave without him before he began firing at the gathered Marines to give me a chance to flee. It hurt me having to leave him behind, but we both knew from experience they likely wouldn't have orders to kill him. Most dictators preferring to capture would-be assassins and torture them for information about who hired them. Even with my brother's distraction, a large group of Marines was still on my heels. A firefight broke out between me and the Marines, and even though I was able to blow away over a dozen of them, a few of their bullets were able to hit home, and I found myself in an uphill battle trying to fight off the Marines and stop myself from bleeding to death. What a way to go, dying in the snow while fighting some no-name Marines. So uncool. I thought, ready to accept my dead before two strange men interrupted the battle and made quick work of the remaining soldiers. Then one of the men approached me, asking me my name and whether or not I was okay. "My name is Rock," I responded before I passed out from blood loss. The last thing I saw was the face of a blonde man with whisker-like scars on his face. Naruto and Idio decided to work together to carry the unconscious giant, Rock, to a nearby cave so that they could all wait out the current blizzard before any of them froze to death. Packing piles of snow in front of the entrance of the cave proved to be enough to block off the cold winds, and thanks to Idio's explosive hands they were able to start a small fire in the cave so that they could keep warm. Luckily for Rock, both Naruto and Idio had at least basic first aid training that allowed them to treat the Yeti's bullet wounds and stop him from bleeding out. When they were both sure their new companion wouldn't die on them, Naruto actually took some time to look him over. In all his time sailing under Big Mom and her diverse band of pirates, he'd never seen anyone quite like Rock before. He was relatively small for a giant, standing at around 30 feet tall with very long limbs. However, what set him apart was the fact he was covered in white fur. It must have served to keep him warm, seeing as how the only clothes he was wearing were a bowler hat and blue shorts. Not to mention his upper torso, which at first glance he thought was covered in shadows, turned out to just be very dark fur, and his face under the shade of his cap was oddly rigid and defined, too. Maybe he is from a separate tribe of giants that adapted to the cold. Naruto theorized. Apparently Big Mom's obsession with unique races and creatures had rubbed off on him. Hey, the big guy is waking up, Idio stated, breaking Naruto out of his train of thought. The eyes of the winter giant slowly opened, with Rock sitting up and holding his head in obvious pain. When Rock was finally able to compose himself and realized he was not alone in the cave, the giant reached for his rifle and aimed it at Naruto and Idio. "Who are you two?" Rock questioned aggressively while cocking his rifle. "Wow, hold on there, big guy. I don't think that's a smart idea," Naruto pleaded, uncomfortable with fighting with someone so heavily wounded and not wanting the cave they were in to accidentally collapse. Seeing the logic in Naruto's argument, Rock finally lowered his gun before he sat up and leaned against the cave wall, still cautious of the pirate duo. "Thank you. I'm happy to see you're awake. My name is Naruto and this is my friend Idio," Naruto stated, pointing to the long-arm boxer. "Nice to meet you as well. My name is Rock. I'm sorry for the hostility, but today just hasn't been my day." "I can tell. Was there any particular reason why those Marines back there were trying to kill you?" Naruto asked, wanting to know more about the mysterious Yeti. "Well, a long story short is my brother and I are mercenaries, and we were sent to a town nearby to get rid of our target. Apparently our client forgot to tell us he was a fruit user, and he used his ability to take us by surprise, and his men were able to capture my brother," Rock explained sadly, still trying to think of a plan for how he would rescue his twin brother. "Wait, this village wouldn't be named Snowbell, would it?" Idio asked, hoping the lanky giant would be one of the men they were looking for. "Yay, how did you know?" "We know because we've both been looking for you and your brother. I'm starting up a pirate crew and I've been looking for some powerful people, and word around the island is that you and your twin brother are the best. Well, it's cool that our names are held in such high regard, but I don't have time to consider becoming a pirate. I still need to rescue my brother from those Marines and kill that Marine captain. The Yeti Cool Brothers have never failed an assassination mission before, and it would be so uncool if we start now," explained Rock, who ignored his own wounds and stood up, grabbed his rifle, and made his way towards the cave entrance. "Wait, I think I can come up with a compromise," Naruto offered, thinking up a plan that would make everyone happy. Scotch's POV. After surrendering himself to the Snowbell Town Marines, Scotch found himself tied up to a large post in the middle of the town, surrounded by townsfolk and several Marine guards. Apparently the Marine captain felt Scotch should be made an example out of in case any of the locals were thinking of rebelling. Well, this mission was definite failure. Oh well, at least Rock was able to escape. Scotch thought positively of his twin brother, seemingly unconcerned about his still bleeding stomach wound. "Hey freak, we were talking to you," shouted one of the angry Marines surrounding Scotch's prone form, taking him out of his train of thought. "Oh really, I must have forgotten," Scotch responded casually, completely ignoring the soldier's hostile attitude. "You disrespectful freak," the Marine grunt yelled, angry while reaching for the pistol at his side. "At ease, soldier," ordered a calm, commanding voice that froze the Marine soldier in place. The soldiers parted and saluted as the speaker revealed himself to be the infamous Marine captain, dictator of Snowpoint, and the Yeti brothers' target, Marine Captain John Glassjaw. Glassjaw was a rather unassuming man standing just under 6 feet tall with well-combed black hair alongside the thick glasses he wore. "So you're one of the assassins sent to kill me?" Glassjaw stated as a fact more than a question. Scotch chose to be silent, his easygoing attitude now gone in the presence of his former target. "This man is dangerous. Listen, I know from your reputation that both you and your brother are professionals, so I won't waste your time by beating around the bush. I'd be willing to put all this messy business of ours behind and let you go if you agree to name your employer. Glassjaw explained to the giant, causing a small group of the Snowpoint civilians to gasp in fear. Scotch took a moment to think over Glassjaw's offer while looking at the terrified, miserable faces of the Snowpoint civilians. So what is your answer? I know you'll think it's uncool of me, but I'll have to decline your offer. There would be no way for me to face my brother again if I turn my back on my clients. The Yeti Cool brothers have never failed a mission, and I'm not stopping today. Scotch answered confidently, causing Glassjaw's face to tighten up in frustration. I hate to hear that. As a fellow professional, I thought we could help one another. He lamented before he extended his hand towards Scotch, and to the giant's surprise began to cover his palm with glass. The resulting crystal continued to grow until it transformed into an elegant longsword that Glassjaw was able to extend in order to press against Scotch's throat. Whoever hired you and your brother must have failed to mention the fact I am a devil fruit user. I ate the glass fruit. Rearing back his weapon, Glassjaw prepared himself to cut open the giant's throat for the crowd to see. Boom! Fortunately, Scotch's execution was interrupted by a loud explosion that blew the doors off the village's front gate. When the smoke from the explosion cleared, two men could be seen emerging from the cloud and tearing through any marine soldier in their path, while the giant figure of rock could be seen hanging back and sniping Glassjaw's men from a distance. Hey, which one of these guys is Glassjaw? Asked Naruto, who was littered in the unconscious bodies of the marines while Idio blew away other grunts with his explosive fists. He got his answer when he was forced to dodge the business end of Glassjaw's sword when the marine captain used shave to appear in front of the blonde. That would be me. Now may I ask who you are and why you've decided to interrupt this execution? Glassjaw asked evenly while still exuding killer intent. It's pretty simple, I couldn't let you kill Scotch because he's going to join my crew. So you're a pirate? I've never heard of you. I'd be surprised if you had. I've just recently started out on my own. Naruto explained happily, not seeing a reason to lie. Shaking his head at Naruto's forwardness, the marine captain gave the blonde a cocky smirk. Okay then, so seeing as you're a rookie, I'll give you one chance for you and your comrades to leave before I slaughter you where you stand. I'd like to see you try. You seem like the type who loves to flex your might on those weaker than you. I want to see how tough you really are with someone on your own level. Naruto taunted while entering his signature Muay Thai stance. Not wanting to risk getting in the middle of these two powerful devil fruit users, Rock and Idio were able to help evacuate the civilians while also handling the remnants of Snowbell Marines. Naruto vs. Captain Glassjaw. Naruto and Glassjaw stared at one another, waiting to see who would make the first move. Growing impatient, Naruto charged in first at the bespectacled Marine, closing the distance between them with his trademark forward somersault. His left leg primed to crack down onto Glassjaw's skull. Jaguar kick, glass cocoon, only for the sole of Naruto's foot to instead make contact with a dense orb of glass that wrapped around and completely protected the corrupt captain. Deciding to go with Plan B, Naruto sucked in a large breath of air before opening his mouth wide and generating a condensed burst of red sonic energy. Voice press. The resulting short-range attack created a powerful crushing force that was able to shatter Glassjaw's glass cocoon. However, when the shield went down, Naruto discovered that Captain Glassjaw was nowhere to be found. Where did he go? I know now that he's fast enough to dodge that attack, so why didn't he? Unless, Naruto thought, looking at the remaining glass shards of the destroyed cocoon that suddenly started to glow. It's a trap, Naruto yelled internally, jumping away from his current location just in time to avoid the explosion of glass that almost turned him into a pincushion. Unfortunately, when descending from his jump and looking down at the snowy landscape, he saw a virtual landmine of glowing glass shards waiting for him. Crap. Boom. Glassjaw's POV. Standing a couple of yards outside the blast radius of his attack, the dictator of Snowpoint smiled. All had gone according to plan. He knew just from looking at the blonde barbarian that he'd be eager to get in close and try to pummel him at close range. Knowing that it was child's play for him to use shave to escape the instant his glass cocoon went down and cover the surrounding snow with his glass mines. Smirking at his accomplishment, Glassjaw turned his back on the battlefield. His thoughts filled with plans on how he would slaughter the blonde's companion and those Yeti brothers. Hey Four Eyes, yelled a familiar voice from behind Glassjaw that stopped him in his tracks. Naruto emerged from the smoke of the explosion, injured but still very much alive. His entire body was fairly bloody and bruised, with his arms and legs getting the worst of it. He had been able to use his limbs to protect his vital organs, but in return he found them littered with tiny puncture wounds from the glass shrapnel. "Nice trap, but it's gonna take more than some plexiglass to stop me," declared Naruto, ignoring his wounds and charging at Glassjaw's stunned form. Recomposing himself from the shock of the survival of the blonde nuisance, Glassjaw used his ability to form several glass prisms around himself that with a wave of his hand began to break down into smaller deadly shards that floated around him. With a lazy point of his finger, Glassjaw commanded the shards surrounding him to simultaneously fire at the blonde pirate, intent on filling him with holes. Glass, glass. Shard shower. Not stopping his advancement, Naruto breathed in deeply and fired a flurry of sound bullets to intercept the glass. Machine gun voice, he yelled, cutting a path through the shards towards Glassjaw. Unfortunately, when he got close enough to try to connect with a right hook, he found himself hitting nothing but air as the Marine captain dodged by seemingly defying gravity and jumping on the air itself. Moonwalk. He continued to ascend until he was a good 10 feet above the blonde, where he looked down at him with a murderous smile. Glass, glass. Infinite shard shower, he declared while willing the shards to come at Naruto from all directions, giving the blonde pirate no means of escape. Remaining calm, Naruto inhaled the largest breath of air he could and causing his chest to swell to epic proportions. Voice bazooka. Glassjaw had to cover his ears as an ear-splitting wail came from the pirate. The sound being so powerful that it caused the incoming shards to disintegrate into harmless dust that obscured the battlefield. Jet voice. Naruto yelled, flying out of the dust towards Captain Glassjaw while being surrounded in red sonic energy. Refusing to again run away from the young pirate, Captain Glassjaw decided to take him head-on midair by using his ability to gather the remaining glass shards from his infinite shard shower to form a sword in order to cut him down for good. In retaliation, Naruto pulled out his trusty butterfly knife and produced a sonic bubble that covered it in high-frequency sound that, unlike during his fight against Big Mom several years ago, caused the entire blade to vibrate with power. Glass, glass. Transparent saber. Soprano voice cut. The butterfly knife and glass sword forcefully clashed against one another in a struggle for supremacy. At first glance, both attacks seemed to be even, but a closer look would reveal the slight chips that began to form in Glassjaw's katana. Eventually, the sonic blade won out and was able to cut through the blade and the flesh of its wielder. Glassjaw spat up blood and fell to the ground, his weapon lay broken by his side. Naruto landed gracefully and stood over Glassjaw's beaten form with an unreadable expression on his face. "What are you waiting for? Finish me off already." "No," Naruto said flatly. "What? You heard me, I said no. There is no point in killing you when you're already beaten. I promised Rock I'd help him save his brother and finish their mission of saving the people of Snowpoint from your reign. I did that. The rest of your soldiers are being beaten by Idio as we speak, and the civilians are probably already using the transponder snails in your base to call your higher-ups and tell them what you've been doing to them. Alive or dead, it doesn't matter, your career is over." Naruto finished darkly before he turned his back on the corrupt Marine and began making his way to Snowpoint. 3. "How dare this upstart look down on me? I refuse to be defeated, some no-name pirate scum like you." Glassjaw thought angrily, disgusted that a pirate would talk down to him like that. Using the last of his strength, he struggled to his feet and glared at Naruto's turned back before using his devil fruit power to reform the blade of his broken sword and pointing it at the blonde's unguarded back. "Die, fool. Glass, glass. Transparent piercing saber." The crazed Marine yelled, forming another glass weapon and extending the length of the blade so that he could run Naruto through. What the bitter Marine captain failed to realize, though, was that his blade may be invisible to the naked eye, but it still made a noise as it traveled through the air. Naruto sidestepped the deadly blade before turning around and charging at the captain with anger in his eyes. "How about you die first, bitch?" Naruto snarled before delivering a devastating tiger uppercut that sent Captain Glassjaw's body flying into the air while he charged up another sonic blast. Voice missile. When the resulting red sonic beam struck Captain Glassjaw, it sent him flying into the horizon like a shooting star. Following Glassjaw's defeat, the remaining Marines decided to surrender and be restrained by the local townspeople. The majority of them tried to apologize and blame their former captain as the cause of their evil deeds, but the locals didn't buy it. Feeling betrayed by the Marines that were supposed to protect them, the people of Snowbelt Town decided to kick out all the Marines from the town, take the Marine base and all of the weapons inside as their own, and learn to protect themselves from now on. Watching the former meek civilians finally decide to take their town back truly put a smile on Naruto's face. "Thank you, Mr. Uzumaki. If it wasn't for you and your comrades, we would have never been able to be free. Is there anything more we can do for you?" stated the mayor of Snowbelt Town, a short and stocky man with a large mustache, while bowing. A large crowd was forming outside the main gate of the town, where the townspeople were giving their final farewells to the small pirate crew. "No thank you, Mr. Mayor, I think we're good," Naruto responded while pointing to the large sack of goodies given to him by the people of Snowbelt. They spared no expense and gave the group of men food, money, and even clothes to take with them on their journey. The loot bag getting so big that Rock had to be the one to carry it on his back like a large backpack. With one final tearful goodbye, the small pirate crew said their goodbyes to the people of Snowbelt and made their way to the island's port. "So Captain, where are we heading to now?" Scotch asked, still nursing the stab wound on his stomach that the local doctor had finally been able to bandage for him. "We're still gonna sail around the South Blue for a while, guys. There are still a few more positions in the crew we need to fill before we are able to take on the Grand Line," he explained confidently, happy that his ideal crew was coming together. However, this train of thought put one idea in the blonde captain's head that he completely looked over since he decided to recruit the Yeti Cool brothers. "How the hell is my boat going to fit these two?" 1 week after recruiting the Yeti Cool brothers and saying farewell to the citizens of Snowpoint, Naruto and rest of his growing crew found themselves sailing across the open seas of the South Blue. "Are you sure you know where you're taking us, Captain?" asked Idio from the ship's crow's nest. Don't get him wrong, he trusted Naruto's judgment, but being on a boat for 7 days straight and still not being told where you were heading can make even the most loyal crew member skeptical. "I told you already, we're heading to an old hangout of mine back when I used to sail under the old lady," Naruto replied, using his affectionate nickname for his former female captain. Before leaving the last island, Naruto had told his new crew about his past with Big Mom, and judging by the shocked look on their faces, his respect definitely elevated in their eyes. "Don't sweat it, Idio, our captain knows what he's doing. Yay, just be cool," added the Yeti Cool brothers evenly while both were laying down on their respective side of the ship. Both of the giants, due to their size, couldn't fit on the actual ship, so with the assistance of the people of Snowpoint, 2 extremely big canoe-like crafts were used and attached to either side of their pirate ship. Idio shook his head at the twins' ever-present laid-back attitude. He had assumed that 2 trained assassins would be more serious when it came to these types of things, but since their recruitment they've shown to be some of the most relaxed people he'd ever seen. Naruto simply smiled, behind the ship's wheel, at the interaction between his crew before his eyes seemed to light up at the thick cloud of mist that began to roll in. "We're close now." 2 hours later, when the mist finally cleared up, the small pirate ship found itself entering the mouth of a dark sea cave with only their ship's lamps to guide their way. They sailed deeper into the cave for a while before they were in front of a massive iron gate where they were surrounded by the muzzles of several cannons protruding from the cave walls. "Halt! Proceed no further, or we will open fire," ordered an unknown voice that seemed to come from behind the gate. The immediate threat caused Rock and Scotch to reach for their rifles, but a quick look from their blonde captain was enough to put them at ease for the time being. Walking to the front of the ship, Naruto addressed the mysterious voice's threat. "We mean you no harm, we simply wish for passage through the gate." "So what makes you think we should allow you passage?" questioned the voice angrily. Naruto simply smiled before answering the voice's question. "Because the true path is difficult and full of obstacles. It's the responsibility of those who live freely to help guide one another on their journey," answered Naruto, almost as if he was reciting a mantra. Seemingly happy with Naruto's answer to their question, the mysterious guardian opened the iron doors of the gate and they were allowed passage through. Activating the dial motor, they were able to exit the cavernous passage, where they entered a code that took every crew member besides Naruto's breath away. Situated in the middle of this secluded cove was an enormous city with beautiful Chinese architecture that was covered in so many bright lights that the city itself seemed to shine against the clear seawater. After leaving their ship at the closest dock, Naruto and his crew were making their way through the busy streets of Gokudo City. The hidden metropolis was filled with bright lights and vendors seemingly on every street corner looking to sell their goods. From foods, weapons, and even exotic pets, the local vendors embraced the four tourists with open arms and their best charismatic smiles. Knowing that his crew members were getting overwhelmed with the attention they were getting and that they would be bursting with questions to ask him, Naruto decided to take them to a nearby restaurant. The establishment was thankfully out of the way of the busy main street and had a much more relaxed atmosphere. The restaurant did not have a lot of patrons inside and had a very laid-back feel. The small number of people present simply enjoying their meals and drinks. Finding a secluded corner for his comrades, Naruto paid for a table big enough for all four of them to sit comfortably. A pretty waitress named Ayami soon came over, took each of their orders, and the four hungry men were finally able to fill their empty stomachs. "So Naruto, what's the deal with this place anyway? I never heard of Gokudo before or seen it on any map." Idio asked the blonde while eating a T-bone steak. "I'd be surprised if you had. Gokudo started off as a hidden fortress for a well-known Yakuza syndicate formed by four great houses that used to control the South Blue. However, with the start of the Great Pirate Era and the resulting increased Navy presence, the Yakuza had to adapt and go underground. The four families then decided to change this place into an important port and eventual city for the exchange of black market goods throughout the four blues on the Grand Line. It became such a well-kept secret that even now it's only known by those with connections to the underworld and important figures in the New World," Naruto explained while stuffing his face with a bowl of spicy curry. "So that would explain why those gate guards almost blew up our ship," said Scotch, who along with his brother was slurping on a large bowl of ramen noodles. How he could accomplish this and still not remove his gas mask, however, was still a mystery. "Yay, they take their security very seriously. Marines have been trying to find this location for years. That's why I decided this place would be perfect for us to gather supplies and hopefully get a proper ship without the Marines bothering us. About time. My back has been killing me from all those days sleeping on that canoe," Rock added, hoping they could leave this island with a proper ship with beds big enough for the furry giants. With their questions answered, the crew's dinner became far more lighthearted, with the four men laughing, drinking, and eventually arguing over what type of ship they would buy. "I'm telling you, we need a ship with a metal hull that we can use to break icebergs," exclaimed Rock. "That way we can sail through the cooler parts of the Grand Line with no problem," finished Scotch drunkenly as the brothers lifted their giant beer mugs. "And I'm telling you two morons that a steel hull would make it too heavy and hard to maneuver. We need a ship that's fast enough to leave those marine battleships in the dust," argued Naruto loudly while slamming his hands against the table, his cheeks red from the sake he'd been drinking. Unfortunately, the crew's good time was interrupted by the doors of the restaurant being loudly pushed open by a fairly skinny mustached man who looked shaken by fear. "The madam's men are back," he exclaimed, causing the once lively bar to go dead silent. Soon hushed whispers of distress began flooding the bar. Patrons began debating on whether or not it would be safer to run to a safer location or bunker themselves inside the bar until this disaster passed. His curiosity finally getting the best of him, Naruto called over the waitress from before, who was still dutifully bringing drinks to customers. "Excuse me, Miss Ayami, can you explain what's happening and who these madam's men are? You must be new here." The madam's men are part of a repel group led by a mysterious woman known as the madam who's been making trouble recently. They first started showing up over a month ago, and since then her group has been expanding their influence in Gokudo while leaving nothing but death and destruction in her wake. She explained evenly, obviously not intimidated by the group's reputation. "Well, if they are so dangerous, why don't you look more scared? Aren't you worried that they'll destroy this bar?" questioned the blue-eyed pirate. "No, we have nothing to worry about because this place and the rest of the stores in this part of the city are protected by one of the four great families. They've been clashing with the madam's men and have been in constant conflict with them since they arrived. Your group should have nothing to worry about. It's best for everyone to just stay inside and let them handle those lowlifes," stated Ayami firmly before leaving their table. completely missing the irony of her calling them lowlifes when she lived in a city publicly ran by the Yakuza. "So what's the plan, Captain? Are we getting involved?" questioned Hideo, who already saw the gears turning in the Uzumaki's head. "What makes you say that?" asked Naruto cheerfully, knowing already that his plan was spoiled. "Because I've known you for 3 years, and other than having a knack for getting into other people's business, I know you like a good fight almost as much as me, and I definitely want to see how tough these madam's men are. Actually, I'd be more than happy to sit here in this nice bar and finish my drink, but since you brought it up, fine, we could just go and observe this little gang war for a while," Naruto said casually, even though the smirk on his face wouldn't go down. Hideo mirrored his smirk before both of them quickly left the bar, intent on throwing down with hopefully powerful gangsters. Begrudgingly following behind them, the slightly drunk Yeti Cool brothers shook their heads at the rashness of their captain and crewmate. Both of the twins wishing their friends could be as cool-headed as they were and just be able to get drunk in peace like normal people. When word got around the neighborhood that the madam's men had come around, the previous lively streets quickly became deserted. Unfortunately, shop owners who were in their path had nowhere to run to. "Please, I'm begging you, don't hurt my cabbages. I'll pay you what you want," begged the old cabbage cart owner as a group of around 10 armed men started smashing his produce to pieces. "We told you before, old man, that the prices have tripled, mistress's orders," said one of the men who, judging by the way the others flocked around him, was the leader of the group. "Please Shiger, I don't have that kind of money. Please just let me pay the normal rate and I swear I'll pay back the difference in a few days," begged the shopkeeper, who bowed at the gang leader's feet only to be grabbed by the scruff of his neck and slammed roughly into a nearby wall. The now named Shiger was a tall, imposing man with spiky brown hair with a strip of gauze covering his forehead, stitching on the right side of his mouth, and 2 scars that ran up his cheek, one of them being over his one closed eye. Unlike the other men in his group, he had no visible weapon on him besides the umbrellas strapped on his back. "That's Shiger-sama to you, peasant, and we don't take IOUs. All those who can't pay must suffer the consequences," threatened Shiger as he formed a fist in his free hand while tightening his grip on the shopkeeper's neck. Fortunately for the cabbage salesman, before Shiger could beat his head in, his wrist was grabbed by a gloved hand. Turning to face whoever was dumb enough to interfere with his business, Shiger noticed the hand restraining him was connected to an impossibly long arm that stretched several feet behind him that belonged to a muscular purple-haired man. He wasn't alone either, as he was standing next to an equally built blonde who had tiger-like scars on his face. "Hey, I think that's enough. Only the weak prey on those that can't fight back," Naruto said before nodding to Hideo, who released his grip on Shiger's wrist and let his long arm return to its usual high shoulder position. Sneering at the 2 unwanted visitors, Shiger released his hold on the cabbage salesman's neck, who after catching his breath wasted no time and ran away. "I'd watch my mouth if I were you, small fry. You two must be new around here if you're dumb enough to interfere in our business. Now get lost before you end up hurt," threatened Shiger, or he reached one of the umbrella handles. "I'd like to see you try," challenged Naruto before the 2 groups collided and a fight broke out. 10 minutes later, due to their size and slight drunkenness, Rock and Scotch had struggled to keep up with their smaller crewmates, so when they arrived at the street corner the cabbage salesman once occupied, the battle was already over. The street corner and surrounding buildings were cracked and covered with metal needles and the unconscious bodies of several armed men. "Looks like we missed the party," said Rock. "Nah, these guys were a bunch of pushovers, not worth our time," answered Hideo, who was unharmed and sitting on a pile of knocked out and slightly charred gangsters while he cracked his smoking knuckles. "Now I wouldn't say that," interrupted Naruto, who smiling while carrying the badly beaten and restrained body of Shiger over his shoulder. Unlike Hideo, he did have several bruises and wounds from his fight, the most noticeable of them being the few tiny senbon needles that peppered his body. "This guy proved to be more than helpful," Naruto said as he dropped the large man onto the ground like a sack of potatoes, causing him to whimper in pain. "Okay, now that I've really got your attention, I'd really appreciate it if you'd tell me more about your boss, the madam. If she's as strong as people say, I'd love to meet her. Trust me, you may be stronger than I am, but the madam is in a whole other league. She is a monster. You might as well kill me, because there is nothing you could do to me that is worse than what she'll do if I betray her," Shiger said as his already bruised face began turning a sickly white. Idea was about to add in his own brand of threats to get the underling to talk, but before the words could leave his mouth he was silenced by the sound of multiple guns being cocked in their direction. The momentary distraction from the newcomers proved to be just what the madam's men needed, as one of the underlings Idio defeated set off a smoke bomb that blinded the crew and allowed them to escape, leaving Naruto and the gang alone at gunpoint. "Freeze, madam's men, you are in Sabaku territory. Surrender now or we will shoot to kill," ordered a very stern, feminine, but oddly familiar voice from the unknown group. "Shit. Listen, this is all a big misunderstanding. We don't work for the madam, those guys that escaped did, and we were fighting against them. We're simply pirates passing through, nothing more," he explained calmly against the false accusation. "A likely story. If you want us to believe you, then turn around, put your hands over your head, and don't resist," ordered the voice. Seeing the reluctance on his friends' faces, Naruto decided to set a good example and comply. Giving Idio and the Yeti Bros a slight nod to stand down, Naruto put his hands over his head and turned towards the group of men and women with firearms aimed at him, only to freeze again when his eyes met a familiar face. It was the centermost figure, a striking blonde woman with teal eyes and sandy blonde hair who wore a black kimono with a red sash and a large war fan strapped across her back. "Temari? Naruto?" The previous tension seemed to disappear and no other words were needed as the two blondes left their respective groups and embraced each other in a tight hug that had both groups cocking their heads in confusion. "Wait, don't tell me you two know each other?" Idio asked as he watched his captain embrace a woman who mere seconds ago threatened their lives. "Yae, Temari and I go way back since we were kids. After I joined up with mom we docked here. Apparently she had some business with the four houses and during the meetings Temari and I met. At first I thought she was just a servant or underling like me, but imagine my surprise when I learned I was talking to a princess," Naruto teased, making Temari's face tighten up in anger. "Wait, so does that mean?" questioned Rock. "Yae, Temari-chan is the firstborn child of the Sabaku clan head, which around here makes her as good as royalty," he explained to his crew before Temari roughly pinched his cheek and pulled the taller blonde to her eye level. "Actually, Naru-chan, if you insist on referring to me as royalty, then now I am a queen. I'm the new head of the Sabaku clan," Temari clarified in a husky, attractive tone as she leaned into Naruto's now blushing face. However, before their lips could touch, the female Yakuza boss playfully flicked him on his forehead. "Ouch!" Naruto exclaimed as he nursed his sore head while mumbling how much of a tease the woman was. "Anyway, is there a reason you're in my neck of the woods and getting involved in my turf war? I didn't get any word that Big Mom was making a visit?" asked Temari. "She isn't. Big Mom allowed me to leave so I could go out on my own and start my own crew. I would have visited you sooner, but I needed to go off and train so I'd be ready to handle the Grand Line by myself," Naruto explained as he went into detail on his journey so far in the South Blue leading up to his eventual conflict with the madam's men. "Temari-sama, do you wish for us to send out a search party? They couldn't have gotten too far?" asked one of her subordinates, a tall bald man with a sheet covering half of his face. "No, Baki, it would be pointless. The cowards are experts at running away. Gather a street team to handle the damage to the area and then do a sweep to make sure all the nearby residents are okay. We're already late as it is for the gathering," Temari ordered as the older man bowed in understanding before following his mistress's commands. "Gathering? Gathering of who?" asked Idio. "A gathering of the four royal families. We rarely ever meet as we prefer to leave each other to our own devices, but with the emergence of this madam and her various assaults in all of Gokudo's territories, she no longer can be ignored. I was hoping this time we could confront her underlings directly and take one alive for questioning on their hideout location, but this looks like another dead end," Temari explained solemnly, only for her dark mood to be ruined by Naruto's sudden laughter. "Did I say something funny?" Temari asked hotly, not liking Naruto making light of her problems. "No, Temari-chan, you just so happen to be a very lucky girl. Consider your problems solved, because as long as I'm around there is no place these guys can hide," encouraged Naruto as he pointed to his ears. The simple gesture making her sad face light up in understanding. Elsewhere on Gokudo City, Shiger and the rest of the madam's men limped through a dark corridor before opening a large pair of double doors that lead to a throne room. The room was large and heavily decorated with a jade throne at its center that was occupied by a distinctly female figure. The group kneeled towards the ornate throne before addressing their master. "Madam, we are here to report that our mission was a failure. While collecting for you we were interrupted and defeated by unknown pirates, then encountered the Sabaku gang, but we were able to escape as the groups were arguing." Shiger debriefed swiftly. The minute those words left his mouth, the tension in the room thickened and a strong breeze forced the large double doors shut. "Did you tell them anything about our plans?" the figure asked evenly. Hiding the underlying danger the wrong answer would result in. "No madam, we would never. They still don't know anything," Shiger assured fearfully, hoping to keep himself and the others from being killed. His words seemed to do the trick as the pressure in the room lessened. "Fine, that will be all. Inform the others that the operation will be moved up to 3 days from now," she ordered as the group left her throne room. "Those idiots almost gave the entire plan away. If I didn't need the extra manpower I'd have killed those fools by now," she raged internally before calming herself. Patience was a virtue, and soon her months of plotting will pay off. This island will be all hers, and her ultimate goal will finally be in reach. Temari and her followers led Naruto and company to the centermost part of the city, where they found themselves at the entrance to a grand multi-story palace that dwarfed the surrounding structures. The front gate of the palace was protected by huge muscled guards who, while giving Naruto's group distrustful glares, still let the large group through at Temari's insistence. The inside of the palace proved to be just as elaborate as the outside, with the hallways being lined with expensive works of art. After entering the building, the diverse group of yakuza and pirates were greeted by a small but well-dressed man who, judging by his attire, was a servant or butler. "Good evening, Temari-sama. Your presence is much appreciated, seeing as how the others have been waiting on you for quite some time now and have become very ornery," stated the servant respectfully after bowing to the blonde yakuza member and leading the group deeper into the palace. "Very well then, we shouldn't make them wait any longer, shall we?" Temari said casually, not caring one bit if the other bosses were offended by her tardiness. The short man shook his head at Temari's joke before giving each member of Naruto's crew strange looks, especially towards Rock and Scotch, who thanks to the palace's large size were able to follow them through the hallway without crouching. After going through a final corridor, the group found themselves in an enormous dining room with a large circular table at its center with yakuza members standing around it. The gangsters themselves seemed to be divided into 3 distinct groups that each seemed to flock protectively around one individual that Naruto assumed were their bosses. "Well, it's about time you arrived, princess. Back in my day we didn't believe in showing up late to important occasions like this. What took you so long?" growled out a short old man with a white beard and mustache whose balding head had a traditional topknot. "I had some business to take care of. Apparently that woman thought it would be smart to send her goons again, in broad day no less, to go and threaten the people under my territory." Temari matter-of-factly, her voice going noticeably dark at the mention of Madame Shi and her subordinates. "Understandable," commented a fairly young redhead with grayish-brown eyes who was wearing an all-black kimono. "However, now that everyone is present, I feel it's time for this meeting of the families to begin." Temari and 3 other bosses then all took their place standing near their seats at the table, with each of their respective groups taking their place behind them, with the room going completely quiet. "I will begin," stated a blonde man, finally breaking the silence. He was a rather unassuming man in his early 40s with long ash-blonde hair that reached his back, that was also wearing a blood-red haori. He had blue-green eyes with strong facial features which highlighted his defined jawline. "I am Yamanaka Inoichi, current leader of the Yamanaka family. Our bloodline can be traced back to a tribe of fortune-tellers and swindlers who later on became infamous spies. We continue to walk the true path regardless of its obstacles," stated Inoichi before he removed his haori and exposed his back, which was completely covered in tattoos. The largest and most noticeable of them being a centerpiece of a circular symbol that appeared to be some type of bush flower. 1. Following his example, the short elderly man from earlier who removed his own robe in order to show his wrinkled bared back. Like Inoichi before him, the old man had an elaborate tattoo which depicted a detailed Rocky Mountain terrain with the kanji for earth inscribed on the old man's left shoulder blade. "My name is Tsuchikage Onoki, current head of the Tsuchikage family. Our family comes from a small family of stonemasons from Centauria before migrating in order to avoid the influence of the world government. We all have decided to walk the true path regardless of the obstacles we may face. Onoki stated firmly before closing his top. Next, the red-headed man began to remove his black kimono in order to show off his tattoos. The largest and most distinctive of them being of a demonic puppet mask on his spine which had a symbol on its forehead, a red scorpion. I am Kugutsu Sasori, current head of the Kugutsu family. We are descended from a puppeteer theater troupe in Brisk Kingdom. Despite its obstacles, we continue to walk the true path. Turning away from the other bosses, Tamari shamelessly opened her kimono top and showed her ink. Like the male family heads before her, all of the skin on Tamari's body that was hidden by her kimono was covered in tattoos. The most elaborate of them being the one on her back, which displayed an elaborate night desert landscape that at its center depicted a large tanuki creature with blue markings, seemingly roaring at the desert moon, too. I am Sabaku Tamari, current head of the Sabaku family. We can trace our roots back over 100 years ago when my ancestors were a simple band of traveling desert bandits. Despite its obstacles, we continue to walk the true path, repeated Tamari before she closed up her kimono and turned to face her fellow bosses. After all of the introductions were out of the way, the heads of the four families took their seats at the round table. Now that our introductions are out of the way, Sabaku-san, don't you think it's time for you to introduce us to your friends that you've invited to our meeting? Asked Sasori politely while gesturing towards Naruto and his crew. There is no need, I already know who these men are. Inoichi interrupted Tamari before she could answer as he was handed 3 pieces of paper from an underling which he presented to the rest of the room. Each of the papers were a bounty poster with the faces of every member of Naruto's group. Dead or alive. Killers of the Snowy Mountain, Yeti Cool Brothers, Rock and Scotch. 10 million berry, each. The twins' bounty poster was actually a rough sketch of the twins that had a dark outline of their faces along with their massive fur-covered bodies. Dead or alive. Destruction Cannon, Ideo. 12 million berry. Ideo's photo was taken of him during their fight with Glassjaw's men when he was blowing away some of the Marines with his signature explosive punch. Dead or alive. Hellscream, Uzumaki Naruto. 40 million berry. The bounty photo was also of Naruto during their break-in of Snowbell Town. He had a smirk on his face while the splintered remains of the town gate and fallen marine grunts were at his feet. These bounties are barely a week old, but it's not every day that we get an up-and-coming pirate like yourself acquire such a large bounty so quickly. Complimented Inoichi. Bounties aside, that still doesn't explain why Miss Tamari allowed them to join this meeting. You'd think the head of the Sabaku clan would have more faith in the strength of her followers without the help of outside pirates. Sniped Onoki, dismissively, causing Baki's face to tighten in anger. Actually, Lord Tsuchikage Naruto and his crew are not under my employ. He was in the area when some of the madam's men were making trouble in my territory and he decided to intervene. Unfortunately, they were able to escape, but Naruto here was able to come up with a solution for our problems. He tells me he will be able to find the location of Madame Shi's hideout. Tamari finished, causing an audible gasp to travel across the room. That's impossible. My best men have been searching for weeks for information on the location of her hideout. What makes you think this one man could have discovered it on his own? Asked Inoichi in disbelief. The same way I know the exact number of people in this room right now and how many rooms are in this building. I ate the voice devil fruit. I can hear a person's heartbeat from miles away, and once I get a specific heartbeat on my radar I never forget. I fought one of the madam's men and he was able to slip away. I can still hear him. He's making his way towards the hideout as we speak and I already know it's somewhere underground. It'll still take me a day or two to make a full mental map of the underground so we can follow him. This is great news. With your abilities, kid, you can navigate my men underground to deal with that pesky woman once and for all. Inoki states happily, only for his mood to be crushed by Tamari. I hate to break it to you, Tsuchikage-sama, but your people won't be a part of this mission. My men and Naruto's crew will be more than enough to handle her. Exclaimed Tamari firmly before giving Onoki an almost knowing look that stopped any further protest he might have had. Naruto also noticed that Tamari's statement created an unspoken somberness throughout the room, especially between the family heads. Then it's decided Uzumaki and Sabaku-san will take the lead on this matter and combine their forces and invade Madame Shi's base in 2 days and take her out before she can gather any more followers. We can no longer afford for her to threaten the peace our families have established in this city. finished Sasori, causing all the people in the room to cheer in agreement. With a final respectful bow to Sasori and the other Yakuza heads Naruto, Temari, and their respective groups were dismissed from the grand hall and shown to their given suites that they would use for the night. "Hey Temari, I think we need to talk," Naruto said quietly to the female Yakuza member. Deciding to let both of their groups get acquainted with their rooms, Naruto and Temari found an empty hallway where they could talk privately. "There is something more between you and this Madam Shi that you're not telling me." "What makes you say that?" "Let's just call it a pirate's intuition. Listen Temari, I'm not trying to judge you, but if we're going to work with one another then we need trust so that we can watch each other's backs. As a captain I can't afford to put my crew's life in the hands of someone with a possible axe to grind that we don't know about." Naruto lectured the female Yakuza head whose face stayed neutral. "Don't tell me you're making excuses because you have cold feet now Naruto. Listen, if you don't want to help me fight, then you don't have to. If you and your group are too scared, then you can fall back and let me and my people handle it ourselves," snapped Temari, who tried to make her way back to her suite, only for the larger blonde to block her path. "This isn't about me being scared Temari, it's about the rage you have towards this Madam Shi. I know this has something more to do with her just disrespecting your territory, so spill it," Naruto said to the blonde, causing a frown to form on her previously calm and beautiful face. "Fine, I hate her. Are you happy now? I want her dead for trying to take Gokudo from us, the innocent people her men have killed in the crossfire of this turf war, and most of all because," stammered Temari before taking a big breath and then showing Naruto her teal eyes that had turned cold. "Madam Shi was the one who killed my family." "What?" Naruto asked, trying to wrap his mind around Temari's family being dead. "How?" "It happened last month, when Madam began showing her face. At first, we all thought she was harmless since all her followers did was steal from and strongarm a few local vendors. A nuisance but nothing to really worry about," she explained as she bit the inside of her cheek in frustration. "She must have seen our dismissal as an insult because that's when the real trouble started," Temari said softly before pausing to compose herself. "Her group started bombing the city. Women, children, and even the elderly weren't spared from her attacks. My father and the other clan heads worked hard to help the victims of the terrorist attacks. So, to ease the people's worries, he was willing to form a truce with her and not seek retaliation. We should have known that you don't try to reason with monsters." Temari reminisced sadly. "We don't know how they did it, but the madam was able to turn one of my father's men against him. It was another simple clan meeting when he showed his chest that was wrapped in explosives, jumped at my father, and set off the explosives. It was only thanks to Baki being near me and using his body as a shield that I didn't end up dead. Unfortunately, my father and two little brothers weren't so lucky," explained the tattooed blonde. "I always knew Baki was loyal, but you never really appreciate someone until they take an explosion to the face for you, right?" Temari joked after telling her story, not even willing to chuckle at her own morbid humor. Her momentary cloud of depression, however, was lifted when Naruto embraced her in a warm hug. "Temari-chan. Look, I'm sorry I had to make you remember something so horrible. I just wanted to know how committed you were to this plan of yours, and whether or not your emotions will get in the way. You're still my friend and I would jump off a cliff for you," encouraged Naruto, who was now more driven than ever to meet this Madam Shi and teach her a lesson for hurting his childhood friend. 2 days after reuniting with his childhood friend Naruto, his crew, and the best of the Sabaku family had come together and started their descent into the undergrounds of Gokudo. The sewage system was enormous with dozens of connecting corridors that seemed to go on for miles in every direction. Naruto led his ragtag group through the maze-like underground for hours until they found themselves at the end of a seemingly random corridor. "Okay, we're here," Naruto said as he pointed to wall. "This is a dead end, Temari-sama. This is a waste of your time," advised Baki, who was also giving Naruto a concerned look. "No, trust me, this is it. There is just another passage on the other side of this wall. Idio, a little help please," asked the blonde as he knocked on the sturdy brick wall with his knuckle. Aye, Captain," Idio said with a smirk before he smashed his fists against the sewage wall. "Destruction cannon." Naruto walked through the now destroyed wall with a knowing smirk as he turned to his right and saw the shocked faces of the men on the other side. There were well over 30 of the madam's men in the large sewage passageway and they seemed to be moving a large cart. "Hey, what's taking you lazy bastards so long? We have a job to do," yelled a familiar male voice from the frozen crowd before he pushed his way to the front. Shiger was seconds away from ordering his men to kill off these intruders and get back to work, but the words died in his throat when he saw a far too familiar head of blonde hair. "Yo," Naruto said with a wave. One ass-kicking later, Tamari looked through the pile of beaten men until she stumbled on one who had stayed conscious. She grabbed the man by his collar and lifted him up till he was eye level. "Okay, now that the violence is out of the way, how about you calmly tell me what you and your buddies were planning on doing down here with those explosives, and why do you have this map?" she asked sweetly while pointing her thumb at the now open crate of explosives. "I can't. If she finds out I told you, she'll kill me." He tried to beg only to shut up once he saw the ponytailed blonde's murderous stare and her reach for her signature weapon. Naruto had to turn his head away as he heard the ugly metallic thud of Temari's fan bashing against the defenseless grunt's skull. He had forgotten how violent his friend could be when she didn't have her way. "Alright, she told us to place as many explosives as we could around all the most populated areas of the city. We were just now finishing up. She said if she can't rule over Gokudo then she'll blow it off the map," he confessed, his face now a bloody mess with several teeth missing. The revelation made the tattooed woman's eyes go wide at the idea of all the death and destruction Madame Xi's plan would cause. "Listen, it's pointless to resist her. You should all just surrender to the madam and hopefully she'll let us all live. Even though you made it past us, you still won't be able to touch her as long as the three generals are around," he warned before Tamari knocked him unconscious with her fan. "Baki, you and the rest of the men need to go to the surface, alert the other families, and start looking for those explosives. Now," Tamari ordered Baki, who was hesitant to leave his mistress, but a strong glare from the tattooed woman was enough to get him, and the rest of the men to collect the unconscious thugs and move out of the sewer at breakneck pace. With that business handled, Tamari nodded to Naruto, who guided his comrades further down the underground waterways. They moved further and further down the sewer until Naruto stopped in his tracks and placed one of his hands on the wall. "This is the place. My echo map is telling me there is a room behind here. We just need to find the entrance," the blonde explained while Tamari and his crew helped him search along the bricks of the wall until Tamari put her hand on a particular brick that shifted under her touch. When that brick was pressed, a large section of the wall sunk underneath the ground and a new passage was opened to them, and they proceeded down the path. However, they failed to notice the pale orange surveillance transponder snail watching them from the ceiling. After exiting the downward passageway, the small group found themselves in, of all places, an underground warehouse. They were currently in an open space with metal shipping containers lying around. Revolving around them were dozens of large shelf aisles that created a semicircle design. The warehouse was large, with its ceiling being over 50 feet high with an elaborate crane system rigged overhead that seemed to span across the room. The added space was a blessing for Rock and Scotch, who up to this point, had to crouch to get their massive frames through the secret passageway. They could now stand tall without fear of bumping their heads. The group randomly picked an aisle and began exploring, while Naruto used his echo map to form a clearer picture of this room and its possible exits. When combing through the warehouse, the group took note of the numerous firearms, swords, and dials stacked inside the crates lining the shelves. Their exploration continued until they came across a sectioned-off part of the aisle that led to a new room with a bookshelf and desk covered with various tools and blueprints inside. "This place reeks of gunpowder," Naruto said, broken out of his concentration as he pinched his nose to dull the overpowering odor. "Yeah, and judging by the setup, this place is the personal workshop of whoever built those explosives that woman is using," Tamari concluded as she looked through the various explosive diagrams on the work desk. "You're correct, miss, and although I'd appreciate it if you'd put my designs down," asked a new voice, catching the group completely off guard. The voice was coming from the pile of tools on the far corner of the desk where Tamari found the source, a transponder snail. It was bright red, orange spots splattered at random on its shell, thick dark black eyebrows, and had a long Fu Manchu mustache. With composure formed from years of political training, Tamari calmly picked up the transponder receiver. "I apologize for me and my associates for showing up unannounced, but may I ask who I'm talking to?" she questioned politely, only to get a mocking chuckle in response. "I'm afraid I can't do that. Princess Sabaku, but I prefer keeping my identity a secret. I hate that our first meeting had to be under these circumstances, but seeing as how the conflict between our organizations was headed this way regardless, this was unavoidable." The voice lamented sadly, the transponder snail's eye stalks dropping low to emphasize the caller's sadness. "Listen, as a high-ranking member of Madame Xi's group, I know she would want me to explain that you really only have two options here. You and your associates could leave now, and I promise you that neither yourself, companions, or clan will be harmed when Madame Xi takes over this island, or you can continue your pursuit of us and die here." Threatened the voice on the line, which made Tamari look at the ground in thought with her hair falling over her eyes. "How about I offer you an ultimatum of my own? You can surrender yourself to us, show us to your master, and face a lighter punishment, or you can stand by her and be hunted down like the dogs you are." Tamari forewarned while glaring daggers at the now expressionless transponder snail. "Good luck," finished the mysterious voice through the snail before cutting the transmission. It was at that moment that Naruto detected something wrong. His ears were picking up a distant whizzing sound that was getting louder each second. "We gotta go now," Naruto ordered as he rushed everyone out of the workshop before dozens of missiles arched over their heads, detonated, and made the area explode in a cloud of colorful sparks. The assault didn't stop there as more of the colorful missiles rained down over the group's heads, forcing them to escape or risk being caught in the explosions. When they reached the open area again, the group ran behind a nearby metal shipping container that protected them from the explosives. "Well, that went well," Naruto said with a smile that confused his companions greatly. "He gave himself away by attacking us the way he did. My ears picked up him priming those missiles of his, and now I have his exact location. Our best bet now is to bide our time, surround him, and overwhelm him with our numbers." The blonde suggested, only to meet the disapproving head shakes of the Yeti Cool brothers. "No, we'd just be wasting time. You guys go ahead while me and Rock take care of this guy," Scotch said confidently while adjusting his rifle. "Are you sure?" asked the blonde. "Of course, I've been itching for a sniper duel," agreed Rock. "Alright then, I'll leave this guy to you, but let me at least help even the odds before I go," Naruto stated before explaining his plan. The flurry of fireworks continued to rain down onto the shipping container they were shielded by before the group finally made their move. Tamari and Idio ran towards the warehouse exit while the Yeti brothers shot down the approaching rockets. "Voice missile," yelled the blonde as he fired his signature red sonic beam at the girders of the high shelf the sniper was nesting in, causing the entire structure to topple over. "Good luck, you guys, and don't you dare lose. Captain's orders," Naruto yelled to the two while following Idio and Tamari through the warehouse exit. Rock and Scotch surrounded the destroyed platform and waited for the dust to clear so they could see their new opponent. From the wreckage of the platform, a lone figure emerged. He was fairly tall for a human, standing at just over 7 feet and, like his transponder snail, had jet black hair in a top knot with a long Fu Manchu mustache hanging down to his chest. He wore a short-sleeved orange shirt covered in red firework patterns with a bright yellow sash around his waist and a pair of goggles around his neck. "So, now that it's just the three of us, how about we formally introduce ourselves?" suggested the mustached pirate with a friendly smile that clashed against his eyes that screamed danger. "Rock," grunted the giant, tightening his grip on his firearm. "Scotch," said his brother. "Nice to meet you both," said the man before he returned the gesture. "My name is Li Tian, High General of Madame Xi's forces, and user of the Bang Bang fruit, 3. Which makes me a firework man." He finished before taking a stance against the twin giants. Yeti Cool brothers versus Li Tian. Making the first move, Rock and Scotch jumped towards opposite sides of Li Tian before firing their first shots at him. Li Tian countered by pointing both of his index fingers at the twins like guns before they began to morph into small rockets that flew from his body. Bang bang. Firework shot. When the tiny rockets intercepted the cannonball-sized bullets, they created a colorful explosion. Li Tian then started growing strange red warts on his forearms that with a sweep of his arms the red warts flew off his limbs and covered the ground around them. When both marksmen saw them up close, they noticed two things. The first being that every wart had a small fuse attached, and second that these weren't warts at all. "Firework creation. Blooming cherry bombs," he said cheerfully as the fuse on each firework lit up. The dozen tiny bombs exploded and covered the area in a cloud of pink smoke. When the pink smoke finally cleared, the brothers and Li Tian were both nowhere to be found. To the naked eye, the room was empty, but the loud bangs of gunfire could be heard all over the place alongside random multicolored explosions. After the smoke from Li Tina's fireworks cleared, the sniper's duel had transformed into a high-speed game of cat and mouse with both Yeti brothers trying to corner the evasive firework man. Li Tian's game plan for defeating the Yeti Cool brothers was fairly simple. Create a diversion, use his superior speed to overwhelm his larger foes, and then use his devil fruit ability to blow them sky high. He hadn't expected the two giants to be able to keep up with him once he used Soru, but apparently the two knew a similar move to the marine Rokushiki technique. Plus, despite their large size, the high altitudes the Cool brothers had been born to had blessed them with a much higher endurance than the Paramecia type, who was beginning to tire. Knowing he couldn't keep up this pace any longer, the explosive expert decided to cut his losses and stand his ground against his furry adversaries. Once Li Tian stopped using Soru, he found himself surrounded on both flanks by the speedy twins, who didn't hesitate in gunning the Paramecia type down. Reacting quickly, the sniper created a black hockey-like disc from his palm, ignited it, and threw it on the ground in front of him. Once lit, the disc began releasing large amounts of ash that coiled around its creator like a snake and shielded Li Tian from the resulting explosion. Firework creation. Black snake shield. The black ash withstood the large bullets from their rifles, and when the snake-shaped ash broke apart, Li Tian was ready to retaliate. He then pointed the palms of his hands towards the twins as his fingers morphed into tubes while a larger tube grew from his palms. Bang bang. Roman Gatling, he declared, before all 12 tubes ignited and a barrage of flaming stars, 4, were shot at the furry duo. Having no cover to hide behind, both brothers split and ran from the rain of fire. While running from the barrage of colorful stars, Rock and Scotch shared a glance before both siblings turned a corner and began running towards one another. Seconds before the two Yetis could collide, Scotch cupped and extended his hands towards his brother, who with all his momentum, used them as footholds to propel himself skyward. Snowlift, Rock exclaimed before he took aim at the explosive Paramecia type. Himalayan hailstorm. From his new higher elevation and out of firing distance from Li Tian's Roman Gatling, Scotch began raining down shots at the explosives artist and forced him to go on the defensive and use his Roman Gatling to intercept the cannonball-sized rounds raining on top of him. It was only due to his aptitude in observation hockey that Tian was able to see the vision of himself getting shot seconds before it happened, and because of his clairvoyance he jumped several feet back and avoided the bullets Scotch sent his way. Shit, Scotch cursed in disappointment as his brother finally descended and landed by his side. Li Tian had definitely underestimated the two up to this point. The twins were not only surprisingly quick for their size, but they had incredible teamwork and excelled at using misdirection. This made Li Tian smile challengingly. This only meant that now he would have to use some misdirection of his own. Li Tian charged headfirst towards the giant twins and used his ability to produce a cylinder from his chest that he quickly lit then tossed in front of himself. Firework creation. Ground spinner. When the fuse on the cylinder ran out, the disc began spinning at high speeds, releasing bright sparks everywhere that had Rock covering his eyes in extreme pain. Before he could use the distraction to attack the duo, he was forced to jump to the left to avoid being hit by another giant-sized bullet aimed at him by a charging Scotch who, because of his unique headgear, wasn't blinded by the light show. Reacting quickly, Li Tian extended his forearm, transformed it into a bottle rocket, and fired it at the giant's head. Scotch's instincts were far too sharp as he sidestepped the flying missile, used his free hand to snatch the firework man out of the air, and started squeezing the life out of him. "Gotcha," Scotch said as he tightened his grip. "Do you?" The older man replied to Scotch, who heard a familiar whistling sound coming his way before his back was consumed in a colorful explosion. Bang bang. Precision bang. Overcome with pain, Scotch began falling forward while his hold on the explosives expert started to weaken. Once Scotch realized he was losing his hold on his slippery opponent, the giant chose to cut his losses and throw him with all his might. Li Tian flew several yards across the room before his body slammed through a nearby shelf, the force of which being enough to collapse it in the wooden crates it supported on top of the Paramecia fruit user. By the time Scotch lost the strength to stand, Rock had recovered from the lights of the ground spinners and rushed to his brother's side to smother the embers that had remained from the explosion. Rock was able to help his sibling get back on his feet as Li Tian emerged from the wooden debris, injured but very much alive. Okay, this show has gone on long enough. Tian growled. He transformed his feet into smaller rockets that he used to propel himself up the centermost high shelf, where he stared down angrily at the twins. I'm done with using these firecrackers, now it's time for the real display. He bellowed theatrically as he linked his forearms that began morphing until they formed another large rocket. Bang bang. 4th of July. He yelled as he fired his rocket skyward. When it reached its peak, the rocket's shell burst, and instead of producing an explosion, it released dozens of mini rockets that began raining down onto the twins. Knowing the range of this attack was too large for them to run away in their conditions, both brothers looked at one another. Can you hit him? Asked Rock simply, even though he already knew the answer. Yeah, just cover me. Scotch said confidently as he ignored his wounds, kneeled, and focused on his target. Fine then, just don't miss. Rock said, who stood over his kneeling brother while unloading all of his remaining ammo upward to intercept the hail of fireworks and form a zone of protection in the field of explosions. Taking a deep breath, Scotch tuned out the noise of the fireworks, gunfire, and explosions going off around him. Using his mental map he'd made of his surroundings and Li Tian's location when he fired his attack, Scotch carefully lined up his rifle and pulled the trigger. Li Tian smiled as he gazed at the colorful chain of explosions his technique produced. This kind of destruction was what he lived for, and despite it being a lot harder than expected, the pyromaniac was still happy that he blew up the intruders. Those two were strong, but like the rest they never stood a chance. He thought confidently while waiting for the explosions to die down so he could see what was left of his opponents. Sadly for him, his good mood was cut short when he saw another one of the large bullets he had become so acquainted with fly through the cloud of explosions and towards him. Knowing he had no time to dodge and that the explosive ammunition wouldn't be enough to kill him, Li Tian closed his eyes, crossed his arms over his vitals, and braced himself. Seconds later, with no damage done, Li Tian opened his eyes and realized he hadn't been shot. Before he could voice his confusion about the Yeti's terrible aim, he heard an explosion and screeching of metal on metal coming from the ceiling. Following the sound, Tian looked up and discovered the giant marksman's true target, the warehouse's overhead crane. The explosion from Scotch's bullet had destroyed the foundation of the crane and made the entire structure collapse over the sniper's head. Industrial avalanche. The severed crane hook and its supporting girders fell on top of Li Tian, knocked him from the high shelf, and sent him falling towards the ground. Rock and Scotch jumped to meet the falling sniper with both of their rifles flipped and primed for overhead swings. Himalayan slam. With nearly perfect coordination, both brothers used the butt of their guns to strike down Li Tian's weakened body and sent him spiraling into the warehouse floor, where he left a body-sized imprint in the concrete. The Yeti Cool brothers stood over the defeated Paramecia user, so they could check to see if he was truly subdued. Ah! Li Tian yelled in pain. His body was badly broken by his fall, and his limbs were pointing at unnatural angles. Li Tian took in one steadying breath before smiling up at the two giants. Well, looks like you got me. You two bested me at my own game. Facing two opponents of your skill level and being able to show my creations was the most fun I've had in years. I have no regrets, complimented the firework man before a look of realization came over his face. However, I did promise she that I'd get rid of all who oppose her. Li Tian wheezed as he coughed up blood. The blood trickled down the sides of his face as he rasped on, struggling to speak clearly through his clogged airway. What kind of man would I be if I broke my promises? Another violent bout of coughs sent up more blood, staining the front of his shirt crimson. I'm sorry it had to be this way, but his eyes shifted to look up at the Yeti Cool brothers, and they felt a sense of dread bubbling up within their guts. They didn't like the look Li Tian had in his eyes. For what it is worth, you'll both have front row seats to the great Li Tian's grandest firework display. He shouted with determination as his head began morphing until a foot-tall tube was sitting at the top of his skull, almost like a bizarre crown. Not cool. Both Yetis thought before they started running as quickly as they could from the seemingly suicidal sniper. Bang bang. Fountain eruption. exclaimed Li Tian as he leaned the crown of his head towards the ceiling before the firework went off and an enormous pillar of multicolored flames was released from his head. The flames were so strong that not only was Li Tian's body burned to a crisp but even being several feet away the fleeing brothers could feel the flames licking at them and both knew that if they slowed down for even a second the flames would consume them. Using what little strength they had left, the Yeti Cool brothers made a desperate leap behind some large shipping crates that shielded them from the worst of the flames before the eruption ceased. Unfortunately for the twins, before they could pat themselves on the back for their successful battle they heard a loud rumbling sound coming from the ceiling. Apparently, the heat from Tian's final attack not only burned the area around him to a crisp, but the flaming pillar had eaten away at the metal ceiling and the support beams. "We gotta get out of here. This whole room is going down," warned Scotch as the remains of the ceiling started to crack and large amounts of debris began raining down on their heads. "But what about the others?" asked Rock, not liking the idea of them leaving their comrades behind in this base against such powerful opponents while having no clear path back to the surface. "There is nothing we can do. Naruto and Idio are strong, they can handle anything this madam can throw at them, and with his devil fruit powers, he should be able to find another way out when this is all over," Scotch argued while shielding his head the best he could from the falling debris. Not having any more time to argue, both brothers leaned on one another's shoulder for support as they limped their battered bodies towards the secret entrance and back out into the sewer. All the while praying that their comrades would make it out of this ordeal alive. Naruto and company heard the sound of the explosion going off behind them as Tamari slowed her pace and turned her head back in concern. "Do you think we were wrong for leaving Rock and Scotch by themselves to face that guy?" Tamari asked solemnly, hoping the two had found a way out before what bomb that went off. She could feel the heat from explosion from here, so she could only guess how intense force of the explosion was back at the warehouse itself. "Don't worry about them, they said they could handle it and I believe them. Plus I don't have weaklings in my crew," Naruto said firmly, without a hint of doubt in his voice. Taking her fellow blonde's words to heart, Tamari kept her eyes forward on the path that hopefully would lead to the woman responsible for her family's death. The group ran in silence until their path was stopped by a person blocking their path. The individual cut an intimidating figure standing roughly a head taller than Naruto with purple slacks held up with a brown studded belt. He didn't wear a shirt which showed off his muscle-bound chest. His most striking features being his sharp teeth, claws, yellow eyes, and gray spotted fur which highlighted his mink ancestry. "May I help you?" the male said in a booming baritone while looking over them like a lion would a pack of lambs. Before Naruto could answer, he felt a hand on his shoulder before Idio stepped forward. "No, we're just passing through here to go visit an acquaintance of my friend over there. They have some unfinished business." Idio responded coolly while pointing in Temari's direction. "Interesting. This acquaintance wouldn't happen to be my captain, Madam Shi, by any chance?" "As a matter of fact, she is," Idio said in fake joy. "That's great, since you know her that means you can tell her we're coming and show us where she's at." Idio joked as he walked up in the larger man's face without fear. "On second thought, don't you can just get out of our way and we can find her on our own. No need to ruin the surprise," finished Idio as he extended his left hand towards the leopard mink's shoulder to push him out of the way, only to get his wrist roughly held back by a large clawed hand. "My name is Tai Lung and it's my job to keep prey like you from disturbing the madam. I suggest you turn back before you get hurt. I'm not a pushover like Li Tian," he growled while squeezing Idio's arm tighter in hopes of making him cry out in pain. Only for Idio to send him a challenge-filled glare before throwing a lightning-quick right jab that the larger fighter instinctively jumped backwards to dodge and release Idio's hand in the process. "I'd like to see you try, big guy. How about you and I go a few rounds while you let my friends pass? If I'm as weak as you think I am, then you should be able to handle me easily and track them down before they meet the madam anyway," suggested Idio, playing on the mink's obvious overconfidence in his strength to get him to see his way. Tia Lung knew he was being played, but he couldn't resist the urge to crush the cocky bastard in front of him that showed him such disrespect. "Fine," he growled before shifting his gaze towards the two blondes, "you may pass." "Perfect. You heard him, guys, y'all go ahead and I'll catch up," the boxer said happily. "You sure?" asked Tamari. She hates the idea of leaving another person behind like they had Rock and Scotch. Naruto shook his head before urging her forward. Trust me, there is no stopping him when he has his mind set on fight someone. Idio like himself loved fighting and testing himself against others more than anything. Pushing down her uneasiness, Tamari sent him a nod of understanding before she ran alongside the Uzumaki past the minkman and down the hallway. Idio vs Tai Lung. Idio started shuffling his feet and put up his dukes while Tai Lung hiked up his loose pants and took a wide kung fu stance. The two fighters circled and inched towards one another in a slow, deadly dance. When they reached what they both established was striking distance, a flurry of blows were thrown. The exchange of blows started off fairly even, with Idio using his smaller, faster frame to throw more punches to counter Tai Lung's slower, heavy strikes. Deciding to step his game up, Idio started peppering in his destruction cannon punches with his normal strikes, slowly overpowering the larger man and pushing him back. Seeing the danger of his fists, Tai Lung instead began deflecting Idio's explosive punches and tried to create distance between the two. Pressing his advantage, Idio threw an overhead right that Tai Lung met with a finger jab covered in bluish energy. Idio's eyes went wide when their attacks collided, and he didn't see his trademark explosion come from his fists. Nerve assault. Tai Lung jammed his electro-enhanced finger into Idio's fist. The precise finger jab in between his middle and ring finger sent a pulse of electricity through his arm that left the limb hanging at his side. Idio backstepped away from the mink, avoiding another electric jab, but unfortunately got a claw slash across his chest. Holding his wound with his working hand, Idio looked at his now twitching limb before grabbing it and giving it a strong tug outward that left his right arm into its standard long arm form. Idio then raised and flexed the seemingly healed limb before using his restored hand to give his furry foe a thumbs up. Idio's nonchalant solution to his disabled arm left the minkman speechless. Throughout his many years of battling over the seas, he'd never met someone, outside of the occasional Logia, brush off his nerve attacks so effortlessly. "How did you?" he asked before trailing off. "It's pretty simple with the way I carry myself. People sometimes forget I'm a member of the Longarm tribe. Outsiders may not know this, but with our unique biology, passing down even a basic knowledge of the joints and nerves of the human body is essential," he explained before shifting his elongated arm into its standard high shoulder position. 1. The Kung Fu leopard stared angrily at Idio's now healed limb before he relaxed and flashed a smirk filled with mischief. Tai Lung's body then started generating blue electricity that flowed and concentrated into his fists until shined with power. Electro. Running livewire. The gathered electricity left his hands and hit the hanging lanterns on each side of the hallway before moving forward, frying the nearby lanterns and leaving a trail of darkness in its wake. Knowing that this would be his last chance to get a clean hit on the minkman before he melted into the darkness, Idio charged towards Tai Lung, where he delivered two strong body blows and dug in his knuckles with his fist clench. Tai Lung roared in pain at the explosive impact dealt to his kidneys and ribs on top of the grinding sensation Idio's knuckles were having on his sides. Not willing to be the only one feeling pain, Tai Lung dug his claws into the open wounds in Idio's chest. "Electromagnetic murder," yelled the jaguar mink, who channeled electro directly from his body, through his claws and into Idio's insides. This soon became a game of uncle between the two proud men, with neither willing to let go and stop the punishment they were inflicting on the other. However, soon the pain for both men became too much and they simultaneously stopped their attacks before separating to lick their wounds. Idio was a shaky mess, with his hair standing on end due to the static electricity and his limbs twitching uncontrollably because of the damage to his nervous system. Tai Lung hadn't fared much better as he kneeled, hunched over, hugging himself in order to soothe his undoubtedly cracked ribs. The fur around his midsection was black and burnt from the explosion and friction of Idio's fists. Pushing aside the pain he felt, Tai Lung finally stood and glared holes at the hairless mink who had damaged his beautiful fur. "That hit will be the last you will ever land on me," he stated gravely, taking pleasure in seeing Idio's head move around the darkness trying to find him. With the electricity dissipating a little more from his body, Idio could finally stand on wobbling legs and raise his fists to his face in a sloppy stance. Ugh, only for him to be knocked down by a fist to a gut and sent flying to the side by a roundhouse kick to his head. While trying to get himself up off the floor, Idio heard Tai Lung's footsteps coming towards him. Destruction cannon. He retaliated with an exploding fist that hit nothing but air as he was given a few seconds of precious light before it was snuffed out. Ah! Ideo yelled as he felt a pair of claws rake him across the back. Ideo fired another destruction cannon at where he thought Tai Lung was, only to be rewarded with another blow to his unguarded side. This pattern went on for a while, with Ideo throwing his fiery punches into the darkness and getting attacked on all sides. Making the smart decision, Ideo stopped fighting back, turtled up, and did his best to withstand Tai Lung's attacks. "Alright, I might have bitten off more than I can chew with this one," Ideo lamented. He knew he couldn't hold out for much longer before Lung would land a fatal blow. "My body is bloody, beaten, and I can't see a thing. Reminds me of the good old days," the boxer said with a smirk, thinking back on his sensei's special training. Flashback. Ideo panted in exhaustion as he paced himself around a boxing ring with his eyes swelled shut with dark purple bruises on his body. Standing opposite towards him was another man wearing boxing gloves and shorts. He stood at just over 6 feet tall with thick eyebrows and a muscular body. His two most signature features was the 3 horizontal scars on his chest and his large pompadour hairstyle. "You have to move, Ideo. In a real battle you can't afford to take this many hits. There won't be ref to save you, and a real opponent won't hesitate to take your life." Takamura roared at his student's lack of evasive skills. If he hadn't been holding back, he knew for a fact the long-armed tribesman would be unconscious or even dead by now. "How am I supposed to dodge when I can barely see?" Ideo pleaded before he was hit with another combo that sent him flying and hanging off the ropes. "Stop with the excuses. If you'd have paid attention since the beginning of our spar, you wouldn't need your eyes," his sensei lectured with his arms crossed, shaking his head. Seeing the look of confusion still on his pupil's face, he chose to elaborate. "Throughout a fight you have to analyze your opponent. Take in their characteristics and break down their rhythm and fighting style. Knowing someone's style is like being able to read their minds. That way you won't need your eyes because nothing they do can surprise you. Then you can counter and go in for the kill." He finished fiercely as he threw another punch that stopped inches away from Ideo's face, the wind pressure from it blowing his hair back. Flashback end. Taking a steady breath, Ideo let his sensei's words sink in and thought over what he had learned so far. His style revolves around putting his opponents at a disadvantage so he can toy with them. He thought while adjusting his guard so that his back was more exposed. Ideo knew he was playing with fire by doing this. If he mistimed his counter by even a second, he'd run the risk of Tai Lung tearing through his exposed back like wet tissue paper and killing him on the spot. Closing his swollen eyes in concentration, Ideo relied on sound alone. He was rewarded when the leopard mink finally took the bait and picked up quite sound of air being cut through at a high speeds. "Gotcha." Right angle explosive punch. 2, Ideo yelled as he extended his arm to throw an uppercut that changed course in mid-air to nail Tai Lung in the face. The resulting explosion from Ideo's sucker punch cancelled Tai Lung's forward momentum, leaving him stunned and hanging in mid-air. The moment he felt contact with his punch, Ideo turned, aimed, and fired another blow at what he assumed was the jaguar's midsection. Destruction cannon. His signature punch landed with full force, making the kung fu master doubled over Ideo's outstretched right fist. With tide dry heaving, our favorite boxer threw back his left fist and used his back and leg muscles to build up maximum force. Long arm uppercut. The sound of Tai Lung's teeth smashing together echoed through the passageway as his jaw was forced shut by the fierce uppercut. Fighting through the pain of his obviously broken jaw and the black spots in his vision, Tai Lung spent his last moments on thinking of any way he could reduce the force of the punch he had taken and retaliate. Unfortunately, any hope he had of contorting his body in order to disperse some of damage after the fact was crushed when after several seconds Ideo's fist had yet to break contact. The moment his fist had made contact, Ideo relaxed his hold on his joints and used the full reach of his left arm to send Tai Lung's body upward where his head smashed through the brick ceiling, which both knocked him unconscious and left him hanging from the structure like an exotic chandelier. Retracting his arm into his standard high shoulder position, the bruised boxer limped his way out of the darkness and towards the torchlit section of the hallway. "I should go and help the others," he thought before he had to support himself against the wall as his body ached in protest at the movement that was no doubt making his various stab wounds worse. "But first I'll just take a little nap," Ideo grunted out in acceptance. Deciding to give his body a short rest, he crouched against the wall and closed his eyes before drifting off into a deep, and much needed, rest.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.